right, let's go ahead and get started this morning. Welcome back from a long holiday weekend. Hopefully you did something enjoyable and break. And I woke up this morning, was laying in bed, looked at the clock, I'm like, oh, it's 7:08. I don't need to be to work till 8, thinking 8:30 I'll be there. And I realized I had a 7:30 meeting. I was like, oh, okay, 18 minutes later. Hopefully we survived the morning. So hopefully your morning started off a little less rushed than mine. And welcome to staff meeting. So in your folder, you guys have the agenda for today. We'll just kind of go over that real quickly and kind of see what's coming. It has changed a couple times this morning. So starting, Sarah's going to kind of kick us off with our warm-up activity. And then Aaron from CTE is going to come talk about Adobe. There is a new kind of statewide service that he wants to kind of build your awareness around and get us to start thinking about how we might be able to incorporate that new tool into instruction and some of the services we provide. And then Karen will do the peer-to-peers that we kind of skipped last month. We'll catch up a little bit. We'll do a little wondering type session around what questions are rumbling around in your mind that you're too afraid to ask sometimes or just haven't had the opportunity to ask, and see if there's anything we can clear up. And then we'll move into information with tech tools with Sim Young.
She's on her way.
Okay. And then I'll give you an update on the spend plan of how we're proposing to spend the carry forward funds to see kind of where we are. I'm trying to be really transparent about what work that I do that maybe you don't know as much about, so that you at least have some insights into forward directions. And then we'll move into discussion, trying to revisit. So we used to do the Ignites to kind of learn what everybody did. It gave us, you got one opportunity once a year to kind of help inform us around your work, but trying to find a better mechanism so we kind of know what's going on with each other each month without somebody having to give a presentation necessarily. And so how might we be able to kind of learn about each other's work, see where we might have opportunities for integration or collaboration without it being some daunting task or only hearing from one or two of you a month. So be thinking on that as we kind of process the month. We'll try and come up with a good way to do that. We'll do a little feedback on the end of week email so far that Karen's been kind of thankfully leading around trying to get in there what you guys asked for. And then we'll dismiss assistants and support staff, and we'll move into some specialist-only content around just advancing the conversation around competencies. I met with SPED last week. Travis is going to work with CTE next week and kind of help us to get to that common definition. And we'll just give you an update on that. And then the professional learning standards implementation. All specialists, you met with me one-on-one or in a small group setting to kind of talk through the initial model that I tried to formulate, and taking your feedback, I've kind of reframed that model a little bit, and I wanted to bring it back to you for additional refinement. And then we'll take some action around the standards revision, implementation, all the templates that we discussed in specialist meeting a couple weeks ago, starting on that work today. So there'll be some actual dedicated work time this morning to start in on that project. And then just a reminder, your UPM goals will do on the weekend, which I've picked dates that are easy to remember rather than actual dates that you might want to do it by. So as I looked, I think we said September 15th, but again, that's a weekend. So trying to help you by saying the 13th instead of the 15th, but yeah, anyway, just kind of a reminder. Yeah.
The curricular one, that just a misprint, it was due on the 16th, or did you move it up to the 13th? I just want to know when.
On the 15th, and so I moved it to the 13th, so the 15th was a Sunday.
Okay, I had it on the 16th on my calendar, so I just
Probably because she said the 15th, and she's like, oh, I don't need to do it on Sunday, which is right. Please don't. All right, any questions about the agenda? All right, so moving on to the next pieces. Just some general updates like we normally do. We have some staffing changes. So we had a couple, I was on vacation and you all scared off a couple of our support staff when I was gone. So I came back. This is what happens when I go to Cuba. I guess you guys scare people off. So we lost a couple of support staff in the last couple of weeks. So we'll be reposting those and looking to fill those. And then driver's education. And even though Todd left to go back to the classroom. And so we are through feeling.
I'm still here.
What was that?
Troy.
Oh, Troy. Sorry, Todd.
Yeah, I'll make note of that.
Don't go back to the classroom.
You'll get a raise.
The tears. I think think I had a little too much fun this weekend. So Troy went back to the classroom, and his replacement will start tomorrow. Audrey will join us from Idaho. She used to be the Troy in Idaho, and so coming from one state department to another. So we're excited to have her join us so quickly, and she'll be here tomorrow to make sure
Is she driving?
Very good. I did start the tech tool summary sheet in your Google Drive. So there's a sheet that's going to start tracking all the tech tools that we have. So Mentimeter, emojis, and so on that Nate covered the first time. And as Sid starts today, we'll continue to kind of just keep that updated. So as people do the tech presentations, you'll have a resource to go back to. And I've just kind of linked and given a brief description of what they covered so that you can have that information. Other general updates, something that people need to know, some celebration points, anything that happened. Yeah, Alan?
After a very difficult and long Labor Day weekend,
Uh-huh.
I have a 10-pound baby boy grandchild.
Yay! I remember right, the last one was baby grandchild 30. Is this 31? Oh, Indiana.
I have a 10-pound, 6-ounce grandchild.
Oh,
So there.
I was 10 and a half pounds, so this is what you're going to get. Other exciting news. That's great, Alan. Congratulations. I'm sure the mom is feeling that baby. I know my mother helped me against it for the rest of my life. So. All right. Well, thank you for that news. If there's anything else that you think of as we go through the morning, feel free to be like, oh, I forgot. No worries. All right. We're going to hand things over to Sarah, and she's going to lead you through a little kind of staff development warm-up this morning.
All right. Hopefully you all grabbed a blank sheet of paper that is over by the sign-in sheet. If you didn't, if you kindly grab that quickly. So I'm going to walk you through this very briefly. So I want you to be thinking about your dream vacation. So this is regardless of money. Just what? Yeah. Think big. Got it. Dream vacation. Now what you're going to do with that blank sheet of paper is you're going to have 3 minutes, and don't worry, I have not started the timer yet, so right now you're freaking out. You're going to draw pictures or symbols or any other kind of clues that you can think of, but you cannot use words, because you're going to have a partner try and guess what it is based on your drawing. I will tell you there is no rubric on art skills at the end of this, so don't be too concerned about your drawing. But be thinking about just some things to be thinking about for your drawing. The location, some clues about the location, who would be with you, or you're like, just me, and what you would be doing on that vacation. So, that said, you have 3 minutes.
So they're trying to guess those 3 things?
You're just trying to guess the dream vacation location. That's so fun to say.
Whatever your dream vacation is.
Are you ready? Yes.
I don't remember my job.
Yes. Did you grab it? Some of you apparently have never thought of this because you're like, what? You have a minute and a half left.
What the barf?
So sorry.
It's not the drawing, it's the competition.
There's a competition.
It's always a competition,
No
Jody.
competition. For the worst drawing.
I guess I looks more like that one.
Right, no worries.
The lid of the bottle. It's better than my drawing. I know you can.
Wow. I like it.
Thank you. I think I need to go to art class. You want?
Money was an issue.
Really? Things going all the way.
Yeah.
All of the money.
Literally all.
Awareness.
5 seconds, Malia.
What you doing, man?
Oh. All right.
It's terrible.
So now you have 2 minutes, and I'll start the timer again. 2 minutes to share with a partner, and then once the timer goes off, then the other partner will get to also share for 2 minutes. During that sharing time for 2 minutes, again, give them 3 chances to guess based on your picture before you actually tell them. And then, absolutely, but give them a few chances to actually try and guess based on your amazing artistic skills, which I have to say, walking around, I am incredibly impressed. So 2 minutes for the first person to share.
I don't like wearing all that sunscreen. So it's on a cloudy day, so it's still.
Yes, that's
Isn't that a spark?
I know, me too. And I'm taking my everyone alone. Well, you know what you were doing. I know, I was like,
all right, you can switch. Go ahead and switch. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I know, I'm like, I'm just talking
Months.
An island.
I was like, it was this part. I was like,
Yeah, I think it's that way. Well, if this is actually, technically, it's all wrong.
very
I'll go visit.
We're in. Is that
So my alternate gets
Hear about the exciting dream vacation that people at your table were going to take. I did notice some of these were above and beyond the pocketbook of I think some of the richest people in the planet, or on the planet. So that was very exciting to see that you really went with all of the money. I like it. Just a quick note. You do have to contact your supervisor. Other than that, thank you so much for engaging with me, and you may continue on. I'll hand it over to Jen next or something.
Thank you, Miss Sarah. Just trying to do our get to know each other ways outside of work. I was telling them my goal is to go to Antarctica. It's my last continent after I go to Australia in November. So I'm like, I'm saving towards it, but it's like $10,000 to do it. So it'll be a few years. Don't worry. All right. So we have Erin Modell with us this morning. Come on up. The state kind of engaged in a contract with Adobe as a statewide contract for all students in K through 12. With 7 through 12 having greater access to the tools at home, where elementary students just have access at school. And so Erin's going to kind of share what's available, thinking about how we might be able to leverage this in our work, knowing that every student has access to the tools from Adobe Creative Cloud, I want to say. Yes. We talked about this like a month ago, so the fact that anything is still in my brain is great. So for intentions of why he's here, one is to build awareness for you all that this is available and how we might be able to leverage that tool. And two, thinking about how might you be able to, once we know more, what might be the next steps for you if you want to know even more, and then how might we start helping educators in the opportunities we have face-to-face with them to let them know of this tool and how they might be able to use it in their work to get students engaged in the Adobe features that are available now. So I'll hand things over. What did you need?
I have a habit of taking.
I'll cut you off if needed. So.
I would like, however, to.
You want to stream?
Yes, and I don't have the. Okay, while this is coming up, I don't know how the sound works in here because we don't meet down here. CTE is kind of a smaller section, so can you?
Yeah, you're on your mic.
It's amplified everywhere.
Cool. Makes me a little bit nervous. Okay, anyway, if you could, on your web browser, navigate to www.adobe.com. That would be great. By now, you also all should have received an email indicating that you have access to this Creative Cloud content, yes? Did anybody not get that? You didn't get it yet. What's your email address?
Kimberly.Howard.
We'll get that fixed today for sure.
One more to add to that list.
Oh,
Christy.Shrek.
so you get,
Christy.Shrek.
okay.
I'll write it down.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Okay. So once you have navigated to adobe.com.
Hey, Aaron, quick question. Were we supposed to get a personal email or the email that it was included in Mark's newsletter?
It should have been a personal email.
I did not get a
Yeah.
You didn't get one of those either?
The email address that came from was message@adobe.com. So if you look for that, you might. I appreciate it.
Hey.
Okay, once you get to adobe.com, it should look something like this. Maybe the picture is different. I don't know.
This table has a new
Totally possible that it brings you to something else. Anyway, either way you look at it, in the upper right-hand corner, there's a button or a link for sign in. Click once on that. Bring you to this screen. Now, before you get typing too excitedly, there's a link down here that says sign in with an enterprise ID. You'll need to click that link. And then you can put your email address and
Is it our
log in.
distance ID? The password?
Well,
Give
no password.
You don't have password.
Oh, never mind. I hit enter and it didn't look at my screen
We are done.
while
Okay.
I answered a question or asked a question.
Okay. Now, once you get signed in, it should show probably some kind of blank blue-looking avatar. You can update that for your own purposes if you like. And then you have kind of this screen. The reason we went through that right now is so you understand how to get logged in. Anybody having troubles getting logged in, signed into services? Oh, you guys are so smart. Oh.
Never mind, I'm in.
Oh, you got it. Yes, you did? Yeah.
I think so. I don't know.
Does your screen look something like this?
No.
No. Oh, yeah, you're in the right spot. I think you're in the right spot. Okay. Now, I just wanted to make sure that you have that understanding of how to log in. That's how you'll use your Adobe Creative Cloud services. Now, what the heck is included in this? We have all kinds of things, all kinds of access to stuff that you may or may not have had access to before. But it is the entire Adobe Creative Cloud, including services. What does that mean? Well, you have your traditional desktop apps like Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, Dreamweaver, Premiere Pro. Anyway, all of that stuff is now available to you. 100%. You can use it on your work computers. You can install it on your home computers. That's kind of a big deal, right? Yeah. We'd like to thank the taxpayers of Utah for funding this, by the way. Okay, now, beside the traditional desktop apps, there are also some services available, which include 100 gigs of
Oh.
cloud storage, which that's pretty cool. If you're making video, that can get chewed up pretty quick. But so there is a cloud storage available, which that's pretty handy, right? How much you can't ever have too much cloud storage, right? Okay, there are with the Adobe Creative Cloud between the applications, you have these services that allow you to share assets, right? If you've got a set of graphics, or if you've got a set of colors, or if you've got a set of, whatever. Fonts can be synced through this application now. It's kind of a big deal. And all of those things can be shared with your colleagues, can be shared, well, really with anybody. And you can share those assets in between applications as well. So for instance, if you've got a set of I don't know, logos or icons or something, you can save those into a library. I don't want to go through a whole training right now and show you how to do that because that's pretty specific, but I just want to expose you to what you've got. That's the look I'm getting from Ricky back there. Yes, everything you ever wanted to know about Adobe. Okay. Right. Okay. So anyways, just a handful of services, a handful of stuff. It's all available, absolutely unbridled as far as I know. Your employer owns your account. That's important to know. You have what's called a federated ID or an enterprise ID. I don't remember which of those. It doesn't really matter. The point is that your employer, or our employer rather, owns your account. So in the event that you decide to wonderful establishment, this place. I don't know why anybody would ever leave this place. Anyway, your account doesn't go with you, right? We are working right now on trying to obtain ongoing funding for this project. As of right now, this will end the end of June next year. So we're working like crazy to try and right? Anybody disagree with that? Anybody want this to go forward ongoing?
But I do think that part of it is making sure that we're actually utilizing it. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So that's the issue for me. It's like, this is all really awesome. I don't have any idea about the kinds
Such a
of...
great segue. If I had a segue, I'd write it across the front. So anyway, let me draw some attention to some resources that will help you understand how to use these tools that are available, as well as you can direct people that you work with out in public education to these same resources, because they should all have them, even in the charters. We're at like 97% deployment across the state. I mean, as far as the consoles go, whether they've
Logged in.
whether they've sent the license out to their staff members or whatnot, that may be a different story. But everybody in public ed has access. So, if you go to this Creative Cloud icon, take you to creativecloud.adobe.com, so you can skip straight to this by typing in creativecloud.adobe.com, and it will bring you to my home screen. Right, so this is my home. This is where I've got stuff that I'm working on, stuff that I'm sharing with other people, all of this stuff. Yours is going to probably look blank at this point, which is okay. Across the top, this is your home screen where you've got kind of quick access to your frequent and recent stuff. Next to the word home, you've got this link that says apps. This is really helpful because you can download all kinds of applications, right? Now, that can be a little bit overwhelming, right? Any Photoshop ninjas in here? Photoshop masters?
Oh, not a master.
Ninja?
We're going to be now. We're going to look so
Going
good
to
in our
be, yes.
photos.
Okay, so what about Illustrator? Anybody use Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator? Okay, we got one. InDesign for page layout, right? Okay, nobody. We wanted a couple of you. It's the same 2 or 3. This is good. What about, have you guys heard of this one called Premiere? Premiere Pro, right? Okay, we got a video editor here. How many of you ever created a video using any software?
Premiere Pro?
Right? Okay, I want to introduce to you a new piece of software that Adobe just launched called Premiere Rush. Premiere Rush.
It's rad.
This is
Oh, sorry.
the ringtone. Cool. Okay. Anyway, Premiere Rush. This is a very simplified version of Premiere Pro that allows you to do all kinds of cool stuff just without all of the extra stuff. So if you wanted to like take video with your phone and drop it into Premiere, you could actually start a project on your phone, record some video, make some simple edits and cuts, log into your computer, and pick up where you left off on your computer. That's pretty cool. So that's the idea behind this is a rush, right? Like I got to get this video out real quick and dirty. That's a quick and easy one to get involved with. Now, back to the question of, like, I don't know how to use any of this stuff. What are my resources? Up on the top next to apps, you've got this one called Learn. There are tutorials upon tutorials upon tutorials and all kinds of people explaining how to use tools, how to access different features of the tools, and everything. And you have access to all of that right here on creativecloud.adobe.com. Now, some of the tutorials will have files that you can download and work on. Some of them will be just like, what is the interface? How do I navigate this tool, right? I would suggest if you've not used it before to go with the like beginner started kind of things and figure out where you're at and share those with your friends, right? If you feel like you're super brave and you just want to download the applications and dive in, which you can do. That's how I did it. I mean, I've had some other trainings over the last 25 years or so. Oh, shoot, that's going to make...
I'm not going to break the cloud, is what you're saying.
That's right. You're not going to break the cloud. And if you do break it, call me and we'll fix it.
All
right. So, it's going to make me log in. Dang it. I know, right?
That would look great.
And it's so tiny when you don't have it. Fuck. Let's try that. Give me a second while I...
Try password 123. That's what I use.
That's...
You're going to run and get the
All right,
post-it
you
note on
give
your
me
screen.
to power training.
My first job as a
1, 2, 3 is a nice initial.
I know, right? It's so hard.
I can never. All right. Once you launch a piece of software and you've been working in it, you'll see recent stuff that you've worked on, which is a great thing. That they're just like, I just want to help you remember where you were, right? Software companies all over the place do this kind of thing. They also provide, let's see. For those of you who are troubled with adding new fonts, I guess I need to make sure I drop this little line for you. You may have heard, I don't know, but some of us have issues with certain fonts. Fonts that you may just love and adore. You can avoid it. Don't use Papyrus and don't use Comic Sans. You can avoid it. Right?
You always can avoid it. You don't use Comic Sans.
Or Papyrus.
Or Papyrus.
That's right.
I can't.
No, it's wrong.
They're just
Everything.
overused.
Everything.
They're not serifs.
They're said 20 years ago.
Hence the sands.
That's right. Sans, it's French, right?
It's the sands.
20 years.
There actually, Aaron, is there some guidance regarding style for stuff we create for the agency regarding accessibility,
Students, children.
making sure that it's
At what
ADA
time?
Great question. I usually create something and hand it over to support, and they go through and ADA it. I don't know if our agency currently has a style guide.
There is a style guide, and it's supposed to be either Calibri or Times New Roman.
Is that style guide published somewhere?
It used to be, I don't know where it is now.
Think about that. You have to be the letterhead has to be one of those two.
Well, we certainly appreciate that they didn't include Papyrus and Comic Sans on that. Right? Anyhow, so there, I would say if we can figure out where that style guide is and get it published.
It's a G drive because I stumbled on it
Okay.
once.
Maybe we could ask Mark to throw that out in the newsletter. That would be a good idea. Dang. So because I use Illustrator so frequently, it's not showing, but when you launch Illustrator or Photoshop or whatever for the first time, it's going to ask you, do you want to create a new document or do you want to learn something? Right? So those same tutorials that are accessible on the web are accessible through the applications as well. Right? So you don't have to feel like, well, where's that web page or whatever. You can just download the software and go right to it and then start reading through those tutorials right there. It's pretty slick, pretty easy. There are user groups out there if you want to join any of those. We also have a partnership with UETN, I guess they're called now. They're going to work with us on some trainings, and we'll get the training schedule out as soon as we have it situated. I'm happy to announce that next Tuesday or Monday, it must be next Monday. Next Monday, if everything goes as planned, there will be a part-time Adobe Great Utah Project Specialist right here in our building. Yeah, that's exciting. So any emails that come to me will get forwarded to him, and he can just manage that. So
what I'm trying to think about is like the students in social studies classes or math class or biology or whatever class. You know, I mean, I guess for me, it's like the teacher is not a Photoshop teacher. The teacher is social studies teacher.
Yes.
However, if they feel like these students have the skill set to go off and create something cool in response to an assignment, that's great. I'm trying to figure out how the disconnect. How do we get the water to the end of the road?
I appreciate that question, and I usually have a whiteboard for this portion of the presentation to talk about how do you integrate these tools into the non-traditional. I'm going to call it non-traditional. Creative.
The non-traditional, traditional, right?
Yeah. Anyway, to your stuff. How do we integrate it into your stuff, right? Yes.
Some teachers some computer teachers, this is in their curriculum to teach Adobe.
Yes. Correct.
So, Robert, the English teacher might say, you can use whatever you're learning in your computer class to do this project.
Right. And the computer teacher will likely also say something like, hey, if you're typing up some kind of report for social studies, why don't you do the report and lay out in InDesign? But that's what I did anyway when I was in the classroom. And kind of go crosswise there. Specifically, though, your teachers don't have to be experts in the software at all. What they have to be able to do is consume the product that's produced by the student. That's as far as they have to go.
So they might actually be encouraged to, I don't know, encourage creativity among the students.
Hold on.
Robert.
Holy smokes. After a holiday too, right? I'm not sure I was ready for that. Yes, absolutely. Encourage creativity. In fact, the whole purpose, the whole driver behind providing this access to teachers and students across the board is creative literacy, right? Our kids, our students, and our teachers, for that matter, need to be able to tell a story. We have to be able to tell a story, whether it's our own personal story, whether we're reporting on findings, stuff that we've learned in our classrooms, whatever it is, we've got to be able to tell a story. And current media trends are a little bit more rich than they have been in the past. What I mean by that is that we're migrating from 3-page, double-spaced, 12-point Times New Roman, right? There's still a place for that, and we're migrating, and we're building, right? We're going to newer, richer media experiences, which actually brings me to one more point here. If you go to spark.adobe.com, anybody ever used a Spark before? Okay, we got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Spark is about as easy an integration or as easy as a start that you can get, and Spark happens to be available to K through 12, not just 7 through 12. Because it's a web-based app, they can do that. And let me show you how easy this is. If you're already logged in and you're ready to create a Spark, there's one button on this page that'll do that for you. Which one do you think it is?
Get started now.
Plus button. Okay, you're right. There are 2 buttons. Okay, get started now. These are some of my projects. Okay, if I want to create a new project.
Plus.
Oh, right there.
Right? The plus button. Plus, where's the math specialist? Right here. Plus means
Add.
we're going to add. Yes, good. I'm not a math specialist, at least, so this is one of the symbols that I do know. So all I have to do is hit the plus button, and it's going to say, oh, I want to create a graphic, which is like a static kind of a thing, maybe designed more for social media type size of postings, but you can do postcards and other basic things. You don't have to learn InDesign or Illustrator, for that matter, to create a static layout. So that would be, let's see here. That's on social. You've got other graphics, web pages. Oh, they've got them grouped a little differently. Anyway, so you can do graphics. You can do web pages, which is like a scrollable thing that also has a presentation mode. Blow my mind a little bit, right? So it's like a web page PowerPoint in the same kind of a deal, but better.
And my question about going back just for a sec, the Creative Cloud is available just 7 through 12.
So, okay, to clarify, the license that you used to log in is available for 7th through 12th grade and all staff, K through pre-K through 12, and administrators and most of the classified staff. And that allows you to go home and log in and install the stuff on your home computer and access all of the services and all that kind of thing. Pre-K through 6 students, as long as they're provisioned a Spark license, can access all of the desktop applications on institution-owned machines. And Spark. But Spark they can access anywhere with the Spark license.
Okay, so yeah, I'm just trying to think, like with Utah History Day, I have students who create documentary films in 4th grade.
Yes.
Oh, this would be awesome.
Right?
Yes.
So would they be able to have access to the documentary filmmaking tools in the Creative Cloud if they're in
Yes.
4th grade?
So K through 6 will have access to creating videos through Spark, right? 7 through 12 will have access to using Premiere Rush, Premiere Pro. There's a special effects package in there. What's that one called?
It's the next one.
After Effects.
Yeah.
After Effects. Anyway, all of that stuff is available to 7th through 12th grade students. So I don't know what your project.
Yeah, no, I'm just the rationale is just was it cost or was it the sophistication of the tool, or was it the worry that it was
So it's
For earlier
it's an age
yeah.
group and
like I know 4th, 5th, and 6th graders are capable of the stuff in Creative Cloud, probably.
yes, right. And again, they can access it at school for sure. They just don't have home use access, right?
7 through 12 have home. K through.
Does that clarify?
Yep.
There is, not to muddy the waters, but there is an option for an LEA to increase that grade level. What I mean by that is if they want to add 4th, 5th, and or 6th grade across the LEA, they can do that by paying $5 a head for that whole grade level.
What's the rollout plan for dissemination to individual teachers and the required professional learning?
So there isn't any required professional learning. But they-
No, wait. It would be required on the teacher end for them to be able to have the knowledge that they need to use it. I'm not saying that they have to go to it, but the necessary.
Right. Okay. So there is a MOOC. We're partnered with UEN, and they've curated a set of courses that will kind of give them an on-ramp to using the softwares. And if a teacher went through that, they would be pretty familiar with what's available. A lot like going through this conversation here, but more directed at usage, right? And the districts, all the districts except for Park City have received their licenses. And so it's up to the IT folks in that LEA to distribute the licenses once they get them.
Just to pause for a minute and let you talk at your tables. If this is available, what's maybe one strategy that you can help get the word out? Because I'll be surprised if every teacher in the state knows that they have this option available. So thinking within the realm of influence that you have, what could be a potential dissemination strategy for your work? Because no matter what content area or area of work you work in, there's value probably in your space. I was just happy to have new fonts to choose from. So like whatever makes you happy. So let's just take a couple minutes at your tables to think how could you either use this in your own personal work, because there are some great tools available, or what might this look like in your space of realm of influence. Okay, so go ahead, let's do talk for just a second.
The course is actually
You have a part two. Still working on some technical issues so that it is just growing yes, I want to see what it
It should be something that's the internal teaching, letting teachers know if you're going to be tomorrow when it's already I don't have access to it. We just like I also want to do video. I wanted to compare it just like
Kids will be totally
to get the whole just same videos like yeah.
You can do it like I'm just saying help.
with that IT
I saw one in Sally.
and I already
Maybe what, as you're saying this, my thinking of what I will share is that is take things to learn and try to do some correspondence and a whole lot of should I learn this time?
You want to use this for first one? Say, I want to use this for set up my flyers marketing slash enterprise.
Okay, think about 10 more seconds to wrap up that piece of the conversation.
Read in 1 hour section. I really did, so I took 12 minutes and was able to edit a course in and like add caption cards, even to like sum up what we were doing. It was in between projects. This is what we're not working on a little, and then we I know like the commitment. So you create videos like this are a little more curated.
Okay, let's bring it back up here to the front. We need 2 tables to share, just 2 tables to share. If you think that you've got the best idea. Okay, we got one here. We have, and okay, good. So you go first, and then you go, and we'll see who says it.
So, knowing that I myself don't have access necessarily directly to teachers, we were thinking if you could start at least with the district level, since those are the folks that we generally contact with in a lot of our listservs. It would be, this is just an example, but in a meeting like the CD meeting, for example, if people knew ahead of time, hey, bring a topic that you want to make a graphic, a web page, a video, whatever, give them the different options on, and I'm going to give you time to create that while you're in there. And I think when people go in and realize how user-friendly it is and how easy it is, they can easily take it back and be like, hey, look at this amazing thing, and it made me look so professional. I think they'd be more likely to share it then, right, as opposed to if I sent it out an email with a paragraph of, here's this great tool, and then it never goes anywhere. So I was just thinking, if you actually gave them time to go, they'd be more likely to.
So the name of the meeting or group?
The example I used was the curriculum director meet that Jen runs those.
Got it. And I think we've reached out to those folks before on the.
I sent your message.
Yes. Right. So this is a great example. Thank you for that. And yes, we'll definitely use that channel for sure. What do you got, Tom?
I think she has the best idea.
Thanks, Todd.
Another idea. So we've communicated out through digital teaching and learning to our primary leaders just through the initial message. We also have a group called C Forum that is primarily the tech coaches or the innovative learning coaches in schools. And we have a newsletter, so I just sent you an email. If you have another excerpt that would be helpful for them, we can include it in that. So it gets to the tech coaches, so when they're in the classroom working with teachers, and those teachers have access to it.
Oh, great. So we've got curriculum directors, we got the tech coaches, C-Forum group. Awesome ideas. So think about those kinds of things, ways that you can get this out. I just wanted to cover two last items before I take off and go back to.
This is your
I feel like this is my second one. Okay. One is, again, we're going to have a part-time person here that's sole purpose is the Adobe Creative Cloud rollout, right? That's the real deal. And his job will be to develop a training schedule, work with UEN to create trainings that you have access to. Some might be here, some might be in Lehigh at the Adobe facility, some might be local high school, wherever it is. Just know that you have access, and let me just say that you'll be more than welcome to join us for those events. I think your supervisors, you're supposed to go and super valuable. Been to lots of them, and there's value. Okay. The second thing is, through this, you also have access to Adobe Acrobat Pro, or it's Acrobat DC, I think is the new version of it. Anyway, for editing PDFs, creating fillable PDFs, electronic documents. It's a really easy tool to use. You can do a lot of crazy things with it. I just want you to know that you have access to that through this licensing as well if you didn't have it, or now you do.
And they always
What
ask.
what questions do you have?
They always ask.
Is there a tool for ADA compliance for a lot of these creative ideas?
So yeah, great question. InDesign has some pre-flight tools that will allow you to look for ADA compliance, and Acrobat has some ADA compliant stuff built into it as well.
The other applications, I mean, if I was to create some kind of an animation using their animation tools, help with ADA compliance on that if I was to post that?
I don't know the answer to that. Probably not. I do think, however, that if you're trying to create closed captions or things like that on videos, you have to use Adobe Premiere Pro. Premiere Rush doesn't currently have a captioning tool. They're looking at it to see if they can add that, but I think that's the accessibility on motion graphics.
The follow-up of that is I wonder if there's some limitations that we ought to make people aware of. Like, for example, if you decide to use Dreamweaver, I don't know where you're going to post your web pages, but that's not, I mean, we obviously have our own web design department.
Right.
And everything has to go through them, so.
Sure. Yeah, use of Dreamweaver for our staff purposes, I don't know if that really has any big applications. But you certainly could do whatever coding you want. And
Personal use.
outside, yeah, personal use, sure. Okay, right here.
I have a hypothetical. Let's say that someone uses Windows computers at work and has a Mac.
What?
His hypotheticals are really about him.
So I have this friend.
Yeah.
His name is Nate.
And let's say that this person also has both a Mac desktop as well as an iPad.
Sure.
And then
Hold
does
on.
so
Wait. iPad or iPad Pro?
Pro.
Okay. So, because there's a difference. There's
Well, and so then there's also the phone that kind of comes into play here. Like, so the question is across platforms, how compliant is the cloud interface as well as from desktop versus iOS or tablets?
Sure. Okay. So the short answer to your question is that an Illustrator file will open and operate the same way on a Windows machine as it will on a Mac. Same with a video editing file or group of files, whatever you want to. Anyway, it's cross-platform compatible. The fonts are also cross-platform compatible and are managed through the Adobe Creative Cloud application. Right. Well, or through the Creative Cloud desktop app or the apps themselves. Right. You can add whatever, and it manages that across the board. The mobile devices, when you log into a mobile device using the Creative Cloud app or whatever, it doesn't count against you. So you can have your license allows you to be simultaneously logged into 2 desktop machines at the same time. That's what simultaneously means. Good, yes. We're a little redundant there. It's fine. Once you attempt to log into a 3rd desktop computer, it will pop you up a message and say, you can't do that. Would you like me to deactivate these? And you say, sure. And you just go on doing what you're doing. It's fine. The iPad Pro actually has some apps available as far as tablet concerned that aren't available on any other device. Like there's a full version of Photoshop that operates on iPad. Pretty cool. And then more to come as well. Cool. So, that answer your question? Okay. Others?
Tell your friend.
Yeah, make sure to tell your friend. Maybe this is being recorded so you can just pass it. I don't know. Other questions? Yes.
So I just clicked on stock and it says there's no access.
That's something we have access to?
Yeah, we don't really have access through this license for stock. I wish we did, but that's a lot of dollars that we don't have right now. So maybe in the future at some point. Okay, going once.
All right.
Yes.
Well, last question. Do you have? Are there really good examples of some of these things, either maybe already having been created?
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Because I think people need to see it to be it, and so if there are good examples that.
I'm really glad you brought this one up because I would have completely forgot references. There's this thing called the Adobe Education Exchange, where all kinds of lesson plans, all manner of lesson plans, have been created, prepared, outlined, rated, for that matter, for your use and your teacher's use, right? On all kinds of subjects that you know your teachers are teaching. It's not just like my graphics teachers that are teaching Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator to make print stuff, right? This is general content creation. I think the reason the software exists in the first place.
And where is that again, Aaron?
Adobe Education Exchange. I always Google it.
edex.adobe.com.
Yeah. So again, you can jump in there, create an account, or attach your account to the Education Exchange, and all kinds of resources there. That was a great last question. I appreciate your time today. If you've got further questions, you can holler at me through the whatever the messaging deal is, or
Certainly seems to hate.
go from there. Thank you.
Let's just start there.
Oh, you did.
In your email this morning for staff meeting, I added the link for 22. You guys can go to that. So, and this is what the form looks like. I'm sure all of you, maybe one or two, have never accessed this, but this is just an opportunity in staff meeting for you to think of somebody that you would like to send a peer-to-peer to, somebody that's gone out of their way to help you. If you need any ideas, the care committee, if they want to stand. Come on, I know there's care committee people here. We've had 7 new employees and 9 birthdays in the month of August, and they did a lot of work. So if you need to find somebody to do a peer-to-peer, so if you guys just want to take a minute and fill it out, and there's 3 forms. So one goes to the person that you're giving the peer-to-peer to. One goes to their supervisor, and then one goes in an envelope that's on the back wall on that bulletin board. There's a manila envelope there. You put it in there. And then every 3 months, the EAC committee meets. And how do they choose these, John?
So it's a select, largely what I base it on. So each representative selects the members. We have 6 for every quarter. And I base it a lot on a lot of people get several each quarter. So I try not to repeat it, so you're not getting it more than like once a year. So, if you haven't gotten it in the last quarter, and then I sort of just go by either if you have a lot of them, so some people will have several each quarter, or I read the descriptions, and if it's something really, something really compelling, that they really sounds like they went above and beyond. That's usually
And so then if the person that you gave the award to is chosen, they get 2 hours of OA as well as you get 2 hours of OA. So there's an incentive for you to fill out the peer-to-peer. And there's also Employee of the Month. There's opportunities to fill those nominations out as well, and I usually put that in the end of weekly update.
And also just to clarify on Employee of the Month, because I think a lot of people feel like they can't. Anyone can nominate anyone for that. It doesn't have to be like someone you work with or report to or anything like that. Anyone can fill that out for anyone. So just that as well.
And then just so you know, on the second one, the name doesn't auto-populate down on this one, so you have to handwrite that.
Did you not make these
Someday.
great tools?
I know, right? Do you have any questions? Okay, you just take a couple minutes and fill out a credit here for somebody.
Not the name.
We'll try and do this once a month or once every other month, just to force some of us to do it. And those of you that are good at it already, thank you. But I don't know about you all. I feel like it can take many people every day, and it's just taking a moment to do it.
For your abstract.
Did Karen send me some links?
Yeah, she did.
You should like that version. It's all good for you.
Are just very specific. Hi, Jamie. It's so specific.
Common. Not common. Emma common.
Would you like to?
Doesn't automatically refresh it.
From 2016. It does if once you hit tab. I downloaded it so that. No,
I know, I just downloaded.
Do you have one that fills in all the space?
Yeah.
Sure do. Send them on to everybody.
it'll do the other.
Actually, that hard.
You send it to me. I can do that. Auto-populate.
Then, Karen should just stop by the printer on her way to
Right.
the desk.
Sort the file. No, you can run it so I can run down.
We'll fix this issue so that it will automatically
Good stuff.
just think it and it'll type it.
All right, just about one more minute, and if you need more time, you can kind of finish that up as we go throughout the morning. But it's amazing. We took less than 5 minutes, and you probably got one done at least close to it. So it doesn't take a lot of time. It's just taking the moment to do it. We want to offer you the opportunity to thank someone for the great stuff they're doing. All right, so for the next part, want to give just a moment. We have a lot of change and a lot of things that happen that sometimes just end up coming to you through the inner workings of rumbles and rumors in the agency. And so I wanted to take a moment in staff meeting to let you rumble on anything that maybe you've heard or you're wondering about, that maybe your colleague knows and you just haven't had the chance to go ask someone, and kind of get whatever dirt you need out of them today. And if they don't have the dirt that you're looking for, we will bring your question or thought to the whole group for consideration. But really an opportunity to ask that weird question that maybe you didn't have the opportunity to ask in a different way, or you just haven't had the chance. It's been kind of rumbling around in your mind, but you haven't had the opportunity to kind of ask a colleague if they know something about whatever. So just about a minute to two to kind of ask any weird questions you kind of want to get an answer to. And if your table can't help you, we'll bring it to the larger group if you feel comfortable doing that for group discussion. I sometimes don't know everything going on that somebody else in the room might know, and so it's just helpful to have these opportunities to allow rumors to reside or questions to be answered and kind of go from there. So give you a couple minutes at your table to ask any weird questions you want answered.
I'm wondering.
Did you set up
I did. It just got clear when I went to respond to it. But I can't respond to it because wow, go get out what you can.
I think.
I love
I was trying to figure out how to access Google Drive right now.
Then I walk.
I walked here, I just saying about the process. You know what?
Oh my gosh.
You know,
He was very nice.
15 seconds?
because I was just going to work with me, and then I said, okay, I was like, from the
All right. So opportunity to share out if there's still a rumbling question or something you thought that was valuable in your own table discussion that you think everyone might value from. Any thoughts that can be shared with the group? Model. We have people. I'm wondering if where we're going to get those scanners ordered for support staff. They are on order. We have the PRF, and so that might be an example. Robert?
I'm wondering if there's going to be clear conversation about physical space and physical space changes. Like, are there going to be more glass partitions or not? Are there people going to be moving to pods or not? Do they have a say in whether they are moving to pods or not? That kind of.
Gotcha. So, great question. I am going to start working with Cami when we get to spend plan today. There's money in there to finish redesigning the space. Priority being carpet. I can't take it anymore, so we'll definitely start with some clean carpet. But we will be finishing off the cubicles that haven't been done yet. What they'll look like and how they'll be structured is still up for debate and design. We need to make sure we can get more people in the space because we are almost maxed out. We can move out, like Lydia, who's here with dual immersion. I mean, we have like that one spot that she's temporary here, but if we need the space, we have it. But given if we have any more staff come on, we are basically out of space. The only other option is to double up in offices, which is possible as well. So there's opportunities, but we're running out. But I don't want people in like 6x6 cubes either. And so thinking about what should the space look like, does it make sense in some ways to have pods? The pod that's I think is nice is Jody and Troy's pod is just 2 people in a space. It makes 2 normal cubes feel really big, even though it's not you didn't gain any space, but you gained a partner. And you're not as isolated, but some people need a single cube as well. So we'll do some discussions with staff that will be affected by the shakeup of the space as we move forward. I'm not one that just runs hopefully what you've noticed, I have my ideas and I bring them to you. Keep refining until we get it right. So that's ultimately how this will play out. Cammie's been helping with all the other spaces. And so she's got some ideas of what to stay away from. I think they're like, have you seen IT? And I was like, I have, and no, thank you. But then also like the desks that you can push the button and they raise up, like how fancy do we want to go rather than the bare desk where there's just options that we can move forward towards that are different. And so if you're interested in consulting, I already tapped Tamara because she has a visual design aspect of her life. I was like, you can help us make sure it looks nice, aesthetically pleasing, because that's not an area of strength of mine that I'm well aware of. So those types of things. But if you have insights or input, feel free to bring them. I do anticipate we won't see changes for at least 4 to 6 months. It just takes a long time, and we have not even started down the schematic pathway yet. So it'll probably be more January or later. But as things move along, I'll keep you guys in the loop on space. But we will be bringing the walls to be the window at the top, like the STEM pod and the J cube and the DTL section. So, other thoughts or questions for the group? Yeah.
As a follow-up to that, I keep seeing new things happening in other parts of the building that I don't know about. Like, for example, one day I walked downstairs and all of a sudden there were big signs on the door saying, "Don't come in here, IT department only." So I guess they only want us to enter certain doors. The other thing is, there was a rumor that has been substantiated that there are showers upstairs.
There are showers.
Are there some guidelines for that? Or?
This is what I want to come out, like the rumor mills. No, they're just there available. That I think they were holding off in terms of the lockers aren't fully usable yet, but there's been people showering. So it was intended, I guess that was the number one request when people got asked, like, what do you want at the USBE? And showers was it. I was like, really? But I live a mile from home, so it's not, I don't bike in, I don't go work out at lunchtime. So the showers, they're upstairs. If you walk in, there's only a few stalls in the upstairs bathrooms, and then there's a big shower section in the back. So a couple showers, at least on the female side. I haven't seen the male version.
Same.
Yeah, same. Okay. So yeah, they're just available in case like people want to go out and work it out in the middle of the day and come back and shower, or for those of you that bike into work or whatever, might have gotten sweaty on the way, that you can get ready here. So
Have to stay
and you don't use it as work time because you're in the building. Right?
You guys are writing those in there.
I just said to stay when you have to stay overnight at board meetings now.
Exactly.
You know, they're already at the midnight 1 o'clock, so it's 2, 3 in the morning now.
Yeah, there you go.
You can stay.
I can live here all day. Good question. Probably a lot of you didn't even know we had showers upstairs, so we do now. All right, any other inquiries? So we'll just do this from time to time so you can get out weird random questions that you're like, I would love to ask, but just haven't had the time to ask, and kind of follow with that. And then Sid is up with our tech tools of the month.
Well, hello, friend.
Hi, Sid.
How many of you use Microsoft EDU tools or technology at all? One side, 2. Okay, so for the rest of you, this is going to blow your mind. And for those of you that already do, feel free to be the peanut gallery. All right, so I'm Sid Young, if you don't know me and you're new, and I'm in DTL, the DTL pod, and my specialties are digital teaching and learning and competency-based education.
Is this from PowerPoint Galleries, or is this like that graphic is cute and cool? I want to steal it. So where'd you get that?
Slides.
Slides Carnival, which is, and I already used a PowerPoint from that.
Yep, I think
this is a Google.
This one might be called Kate or something like that. But yeah, that's where it's from. So I just changed the text. Okay, so what are these tools? This Microsoft EDU tool. They're supportive tools for student-centered learning. They also provide accommodations for a diversity of student needs, whether that's dyslexia or students with disabilities, or sometimes you like the darker background and contrast, highly contrasted text. How many of you have ever worked with a student who needed everything copied on blue paper? Does that sound familiar? So it can change the background image to blue for anything that is on the screen for those students who do better with that type of background, or green. It can change the text on anything. And all of these tools are really all about accessibility and creating an inclusive classroom, so students have to be pulled out less. But it also works for adults. So if you need the text to be bigger and you don't like to zoom, or if you don't do well when there's a lot of text on a page and you just want to show one line at a time or 3 lines at a time, it'll gray out the rest. And then as you read, it'll scroll at your pace. There's even PowerPoint presentation practice that will gauge while you're presenting. It'll have a pace tracker and tell you when to slow down or when to speed up, and give you other types of tips, including using inclusive language. So if you're referring to he and him throughout your presentation, it will give you suggestions for how to make that language more inclusive. Or if you're using slang or other terms that might be offensive to other people, it will also give you replacement language to be more inclusive with your presentations. There's even a Google Translator or Microsoft Translator. I'm used to Google, so this was all new for me. But there's a Microsoft Translator that you can put the app on your phone, and think about when you're having parent-teacher conference, or maybe for the licensing staff when someone comes in and they're speaking a different language, and you want to have a really good conversation with them and provide some clarity. It will live translate what you're saying in real time with subtitles, and they can put their headphones in and see the subtitles and have it translated into their language regardless of what language it is. That's a great app for teachers to use during conferences. So there's a ton of inclusive tools that can provide a variety of accessibility and accommodations. So today we're going to talk about Immersive Reader. This is something that I saw first at the Davis Technology Conference here in Davis School District. And they're a Microsoft district, and they were highlighting their partnership with Microsoft, and they routinely have their innovators and their product designers fly out from Microsoft in the Seattle area and hang out in Davis District at their Microsoft certified schools. And these are the developers of the tools that are hanging out in classrooms and empowering teachers to become really savvy with these tools. But they're also kind of a guinea pig LEA for Microsoft to try things out, see how it's going, make refinements as they're in production. So that's where I first heard of it. And then I've seen it again at the ISTE conference over the summer. It was there, and they had a booth there. And then I started following them on Twitter, and one person in particular that I'll share with you in a minute. And I'm learning so much about these inclusive tools. And because I do so much in Google, I hadn't really paid attention to what Microsoft had to offer until now. So I'm really excited to give you a little glimpse. So Immersive Reader, who would like to read for me so I'm not just droning on? Sarah, thank you.
Creates a reading experience that adds accessibility and comprehension for learners of all ages and abilities.
Whose content areas could that boost? Everybody? Okay, so each of these icons has a little Easter egg. So I don't know if I can click on it. Try the planet first. Yeah, the big planet. Okay, this is a really, really brief clip.
Today, I'm going to demonstrate how you can improve reading skills with Microsoft Learning Tools. To get started, go to office.com and sign in your Office 365 education.
And this will be
Click
available
on
for
Word
you.
to open a Word document. And now go to the New tab and click on the Immersive Reader.
And this is free.
You'll see all of the page is reducing distractions, and I can really focus on the text. When you press the play button,
the Amazon rainforest.
You hear the text read aloud, and you see the words highlighted. You can easily follow along. You can increase and decrease voice speed really easily. You can increase the font size. You can also increase the spacing, which is a proven technique to help reduce visual crowding. You also can click on a page color that gives better contrast and can make it easier to see the letters. Now you can turn the syllables on as well and break them down with a single click. I can highlight the different parts of speech like nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. Now reading rulers are something that teachers have used for a long time for focus. And with a single click here, I can turn on line focus and really give that extra focus for students. With the picture dictionary, I can click on a single word and see a picture of that and also play it back to have that multi-sensory processing, a great tool for reading comprehension. So learning tools are available in OneNote, Outlook, Office Lens, and Edge as part of Office 365 in Education, which is free for you teachers and students. Go check it out.
So, initial reactions. Well,
Wow.
My 10th grade daughter lost her voice this weekend, and she used this to input whatever she had to say from the other room into our conversation because we weren't listening to her. So she actually knows how to use this.
that's awesome. And think about if you're a literacy or language arts teacher, how powerful it can be to have all of the nouns highlighted in a specific color. If you use, I know a lot of language arts teachers use highlighters of different colors for nouns and verbs and adverbs and that kind of stuff. You can customize which colors you want which to show up. So this was just, this is the power of having an expanded PLC on Twitter. So it links to a video that also shows you how it translates into different languages. Yep. So this is just showing when you're logged into Office 365, select a Word document, and then you compose it. You can add emojis and variables, and then you click on View and Immersive Reader, and that's where the tools pop up. And you can translate it into any language. So think of dual immersion capabilities as well, being able to have both and compare side to side. So that's just. And then, so each 4 of those icons will give you some more information. And I even have a Wakelet. So how many of you are familiar with Wakelet? It was new to me. It's kind of like Pinterest for a ton of different tools. But if you click on this Wakelet, it will take you to Mike, who was in the video. I started following him on Twitter, and he's one of the production people at Microsoft. So this is a Wakelet, and it's just a collection of everything inclusive classroom. So there are some longer videos, there's articles, there's tutorials, and not just for Immersive Reader, but also for their Microsoft Translate and tons of other tools that they have available. And it's all collected in one place in a Wakelet. And then on the bottom there, so that's his Twitter. And then you can also follow the hashtag Microsoft EDU, or just Google Immersive Reader. And then that link at the bottom has free trainings for educators and talks more about some of the other inclusive tools that Microsoft has available. But I was blown away, and hope you will be too. So feel free to explore and share and whatnot. And if you have any questions for a new to Microsoft EDU user, and just maybe a step ahead, feel free to reach out. Nate?
A lot of the technologies you had mentioned, or the video showed the speed modulation. reading to people. And a lot when that first became a thing, when I was in the classroom, you would use it and it just sounded really challenging if you slowed it down or sped it up. It was chipmunks if you sped it up, or it was just like super slow. But the technology has really improved to the point that the voices sound normal, and it just changes the pacing. So I haven't used the different speeds within the classroom, but I think there's an opportunity there for both the students that want to go really quick, have like being able to speed up language, whether it's podcasts, whether it's reading audiobooks, whether it's actually reading things that they're asked to read. I listen to a lot of podcasts and books, and I started speeding everything up, and it's super awesome from a personal perspective. I can get through 50% more material.
Awesome. And being able to choose between a male and female voice, depending on your preference. I think anytime we can infuse student agency into the mix, they have more a vested interest and they feel more empowered, which is part of the mission of Microsoft. So I invite you to explore on your own. Immersive Reader was the one that was wow for me. But I'm also interested in learning more about Microsoft Translate and the PowerPoint presentation feedback. That one is super crazy. And in OneNote, for you math educators, in OneNote, you can do a quiz in OneNote. And if students miss an answer, AI will show them how to solve it and create 3 or 4, however many you set, similar type problems for them to solve, and once they solve so many in a right, they can move on. So it doesn't require any work on your part outside of setting up the original quiz and answers, and then artificial intelligence takes over and personalizes and teaches them individually how to solve things, and then gives them very similar problems that they need to successfully solve. So there's a ton at your fingertips, and I'm just helping you get the tip of the iceberg.
Thanks, Sid. Appreciate it. Thank you for being willing to do the tech highlight. If there's someone interested for next month, let me know and we'll put you on. It's kind of nice between what Nate and Sid has provided, just gets us thinking differently about what we can do and use. And it sounds like Robert's already tried out the Nate stuff, so that's awesome. All right, and I'll update the sheet in there. It looks like, let's see. Looks like this. I'll put up their cute little faces, whatever is on Google for you. Just know it's coming. And then just a brief summary. So there's what Nate's looks like of some of the things we did last time. We'll do the same thing for Sid. So when you present, just know whatever's on Google for your image will be it, unless you're not there, and then I'll just come take a picture of you and your cute.
Photoshop that picture.
Yeah, we can Photoshop you. We'll get rid of any wrinkles and gray hair or whatever it might be. Now that we have tools to do that. So, okay. Next part, in the Google Drive, there is what I submitted, will be submitting for our spend plan proposal for our carryover. So in our department, we have about 10.2 million that is not spent. Not like our own money to spend, but some of that's program money like CPR or DTL or competency-based education that might be encumbered, may not be encumbered, but is just sitting there and looks like it's not being spent. We have about 1.7 million in our own discretionary funds that is unspent. So depending on how the board decides to allow us to spend that, is what's coming up in the next month or two in board meeting. And so the proposal that I sent in was what I would like to see our department kind of spend those dollars on. And so in the files for today, if you're interested to see what projects are on there, some of these were the projects I put on hold in the budgets you requested, just knowing we only had so many funds available for this year, but knowing we'd get some carryover moving forward. So if you see the project that you asked for on here, hopefully that's there. But what we had available is kind of at the bottom, which equals 1.776601, which is what I basically spent. But from something that might benefit you, kind of perspective. Some of this is not relevant to all of you, but for all of the department, the redesign will be for the entire department. So from carpet to painting the walls and the actual main space, all of those types of things that will impact everyone. That will be coming, as well as, do we go away from the bare desks and get the desks that you just push the button like an IT and they lift up? So there's just what might come as the future of teaching and learning. And then resources for staff development, technology upgrades, office supplies, that kind of thing. We have about 20 people that are up for computers this year. It costs a lot of money to replace 20 computers. Some of you might want the bigger screens versus the dual screens, those kinds of things. So if the funding gets approved, we'll have some flexibility in what that looks like. We're working on getting scanners for all the support staff that want them at their desks, so that as we go more paperless, that is faster and more efficient. Staff development. So as you want to improve your personal skills, I would like to be able to support staff in doing that, and that takes dollars, obviously. So whether you're a support staff who wants to learn how to use maybe some Microsoft tools or some of those Adobe tools and you need to go to training, or you're a specialist who wants to learn more in their content area about facilitating academic discussions, whatever it might be, the dollars will be available for us to have those discussions to continue to develop yourselves so you can improve our work and capacity. Yeah.
I think that it's important, I would think, for you to talk about, especially as people start looking at money and seeing a lot of money for different things, to just explain that, especially support staff who don't get paid very much money, that there's not, you don't have the ability to say, well, actually, what I'd like to do is put money here.
Yes.
Do you want to just address that?
Yeah, so with carryover funds, because they're not available every year, we can't do anything that requires sustainability. So within saying, well, I could give everyone a raise and everyone could make more money, we'd be good for a year, and then next year we would have no projects that we could fund because that money comes from the same pot. So although we would love to see salaries increase, and those of you that aren't aware, the board is working on a proposal for the legislature. They're doing exit interviews when people leave. They're talking, getting stories from me when we have people that turn down opportunities because of the pay or leave us because of the pay, whatever it might be, so that we can make a case on the Hill that salaries at the USBE need to be comparable to the salaries in LEAs. They're doing a study with teacher salaries, gathering from each LEA to be able to show the state average and that kind of thing. And I did put in a note saying most LEAs went up 25 to 40% in their salaries this year. Make sure that if you're gathering that data, it includes current pay rates, not last year's pay rates even. So they're mindful of that. I do anticipate we will see some significant change in salaries if we do that proposal well. They're doing a big study, and it's not just, well, we're going to ask for this money, but they're going to show the need and some of the issues we've encountered in the last couple of years around staffing. But if the money was a sustainable source, yes, we could do that. It's not a sustainable source. So anything that comes from this money, it's not going to continue coming. This is just money we were unsuccessful in spending. So whenever we budget, we're like, oh, we think it's going to cost this much for a project. It usually doesn't. And then that money just kind of rolls over at the end of the year. We haven't been great about going back and spending down previous money. So you'll see like 18, which is 2 years ago money, has about $800,000 that we never spent even from 2 years ago. So we have to kind of figure out a better way of spending our dollars and be a little more accountable for it, which I think we can do moving forward. But given our current state of affairs, this is kind of where we're going to exhaust some of those dollars in meaningful ways into either like this year's projects or other things. Another thing that might impact you is productive power. It's a training to assist more productive with your time, using email and calendar and just different productivity tools. Like finished my productive power this morning. It's an hour, it's 90 minutes every week for like 10 weeks. And they check to see how much your email went up or down in that time. And like, supposedly if you're more productive, you go. My email productivity went up 17%. And it's like, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But instead of getting through 102 emails a day or something, it's at 120. So productivity is meant to kind of improve so that you can get through more in less time. So it's just something that if we're going to talk with your supervisors or who might be up next for that, but the goal is support staff as well as specialists would have opportunities to engage in that work, because we can all benefit from being more productive in our efforts. So those are things on the list that are more specific to staff. The other pieces are really related to particular specialist projects that you probably requested at some point. The other thing you might want to be aware of, we are going to try and make some upgrades to MIDAS as they keep working on that professional learning policy around how we're going to pay teachers through the LEA and all of that. MIDAS needs some more capabilities, as well as we continue down the pathway of micro-credentials. We need a system that can actually report out on the micro-credentials and do some work there. So quite a few different pieces that impact the department as a whole, and then there's some projects that are a little bit smaller. I want you to kind of know where I'm suggesting we request money for, and really looking to support you in not only your learning space and working space, but also your learning as a professional. So questions, feedback? Jeannie.
Is the early college specialist something we'll be able to continue, or is that just get us through the
that one is
right
meant
now
to be a continuation? So we'll lose those dollars in ERA every year, but getting one new position. Early college is just a very heavy space. We lost that position a couple of years ago with Moya, and we're just kind of trying to get that position back because there is a lot of growth in concurrent enrollment and AP, and with our board charge around competency, there's a lot of work to be done in that space. We are asking for it within other legislation requests, but if we don't get the legislative request, we'd like to be able to at least fund it internally, but hopefully we can get the legislature. But at this point, it'd be great to have it this year, and then next year the legislature can be the funding. So that's my question. That's the only position on the list. So. Okay. All right. If you do have questions that you want to talk about more intimately, feel free to come see me. I'm just trying to be as transparent with you as possible so you kind of know where things are. I would love to not have $1.7 million next year. I'm not going to lie. I can't spend $200,000 redesigning the space every year. So let's try and be useful with our money. One thing that finance will be working on is showing your requested budget amounts versus your actual spend amounts. And I will be sharing those with you for personal reflection around, oh, that project doesn't cost as much as I thought it would, or wow, that I really did spend that money or whatever. Because sometimes we think we got close and you're like $15,000 short or whatever, but we really haven't had a great way to know how great we have been in spending our dollars. So they finally have the ability to produce those reports. So you'll get evidence of what you were able to do last year or whoever was in your position last year. So you can kind of see where there might be opportunity, where we thought it cost this much money to run this institute, but it really isn't, and those kinds of things. So in the next, hopefully, they're supposed to get it to me next week. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I'll get that out to you all just for your own personal kind of like knowledge and skill, and then thinking about how that impacts our budget moving forward as well. So that's coming. But, all right. A lot of information today. Okay. All right. So that is your current update for spend plan. And then the next piece I kind of wanted to hit on was what's going on in T&L. So we have so many staff, and I honestly, Christy, we've never actually met yet. So nice to meet you today. And you've been here for a couple weeks. So meeting in Cuba just kind of threw things off. So it's a big step, and knowing what everyone's doing and how your work might complement or coordinate or collaborate is difficult in a team this large. And knowing that we also work in a much larger agency, and there's opportunities for that as well. So in the past, when Diana was here, she did Ignites as one way to try and help people to see what people are doing. In the team meetings, you often might share what's going on in your space so that everyone in your team knows. But as a broader team, we're unlikely to know what's going on in your space and to see how we might be able to connect. So as we kind of start to think about how can we go about knowing what each other's doing in a time-limited way that doesn't require us going around and everybody sharing, because that's how it used to be done in T&L many years ago. They would each go around and share. You can imagine how long that took and how much value it might be. You might have gotten one golden nugget out of that 40 minutes of sharing. And I think our time is too valuable for that type of share. So I'm going to be really transparent. That's not an option at this point, just due to how much work we have to do. But I do see value in knowing what each other's doing and having a few moments in staff meeting to review those ideas of what other people are doing to see where you might be able to make connections. But I don't have a structure planned out for what that might look like. So I'd like to have you kind of talk in your tables around what might be a strategy we could use or a structure to be able to learn what other people are doing outside of your team or your pod or whatever it might be, so that we can look for connecting points. So for example, Christy's going to start working on some high leverage practices that we're going to use as a state department. That will be the state high leverage practices. At some point, her work is going to impact your work. And so it might be nice like that there's opportunities for updates around like when things are coming and where the next project is rolling. And Christy, you may not know that, but there you go. And so those are like one opportunity I see that might be of value. But even just knowing what's going on is a place that we can start to see connecting points is kind of how I see this. Questions about your task before I have you turn and talk in your team. Okay, so how can we learn what each other's doing in a time efficient way? Okay. It can be done in a staff meeting. There can be the opportunity, but what does that look like? Yeah, I think there's definitely benefits to it. I just don't know what the structure should be. So discuss amongst yourselves and we'll come up with
We were all in a different department. So this is what I because none of us were obviously in the same department. So I don't like working on. I found out how RTL support to affect how math TTL because I get up there.
Or not to go.
If I
about what they're doing.
Look around and see.
And I love the idea of like yourself.
Like just have like the top 3 projects. Someone gets to choose things. And then everyone just has 5 or 6 minutes time to look at it. Generalize. Whatever time is focused on going to the people.
Support stuff. What do you think would be useful? Because I mean, there are things that we talk about. There's booking.
I get together and talk about our projects.
It's got to be something that's quite a bit of time. And that's where my kind of spreadsheet would be nice. No. Never have.
So actually,
But like either the night before or Sunday night. So, somewhat aware of what I should be working on.
The reason we created the
Well, we got one last week.
Think of a discussion, I guess part of the discussion.
There's the K3 license, but it's not. You don't need it.
No, it's a
But it's not.
it might be just three, but I had to talk to
Two. All right, I'm gonna start over here because the hand is up ready to share.
Amy had a great tool and resource that I'd heard of but never used called VoiceThread.
Oh, yeah.
Anyone? And yes, what do you know about it?
It's just a really easy way to collaborate with a lot of people, not simultaneously. So it's like, so if you think about it, it's sort of like a discussion on Canvas, only it's web-based and a little more dynamic than that.
You can include video or slides or whatever. So it could be an informal collaborative thread of voices. Get it? But then maybe in staff meetings, we can just have a minute to say, what are you learning through that tool about each other? But it would require like people
Doing it.
Yeah.
Trying to reduce your burden. I'm trying not to increase your burden to do this because this is meant to be a benefit without hopefully too much or any burden added. Yeah.
Thank you for that. We had kind of an additional piece that Ricky, well, actually, it started with Jonathan and kind of, we all came together with this. But it was really revolving around supporting each other. And if we had, just as an example, 5 different things, like issues that somebody in our staff is working through and are looking for brainstorming solutions and that kind of thing, that they could be on the agenda as, here are these 5 things, and if you feel like you have a great solution for this issue, this side of the room, so everyone could go support where they feel like they have the best solution they'll need. So that it would be a way for us to, 1, find out what everyone's doing, and 2, be part of the solution. So it would be a supportive mechanism.
Robert could add to that.
just that, Sarah, that's a brilliant idea, and
It wasn't mine.
I had the same idea. So, yeah, right. We did a lot with our state social studies conference at the national level. We just call it open space. People just say what is it that they're working on, and other people, so then it's a really quick intro for us to know what people are working on. But for example, if I'm going through standards revision and I need some ideas about the writing committee process, there may be other people who are like, oh yeah, I'm either going to go through that or I recently went through that, so I'll go there. And then at your adults, if this is like a 10-minute piece of staff meeting and none of these are interesting to you for whatever reason, then you finish your emails or whatever. It's like that. It's just open space, 10 minutes or whatever. Get some productive support of each other.
It's not a bad idea.
Down the same line or add to a different direction?
Something that we talked about would be to put together some sort of spreadsheet that has like your name and a picture of you and kind of what your job responsibilities are, so that when you get those random phone calls, I still to this day will say, John, who do I contact about this? John, who do right? Yeah, so it would be nice, so like you know who's in charge of specific programming, so that when you do get those random phone calls, I think it'd be really nice for especially new people that come on board.
Because I got one of those phone calls last week about she had been told she needed to get a
birth to 5 license, and I'm going, what? And I can't remember. I talked to 3 or 4 different people about it, and I had no idea who to go to.
Just something kind of similar along those lines, but more than the org chart. Like I'm kind of seeing our stop, keep, continue list, like in a way, where we would have like, okay, that's everything they do, and then if we need more clarification, we can go to them, or like maybe that's where we go to the voice thread thing. But we also talked about that, like with licensing, that Erica's a good contact to go to, and then she can tell you who else you need to go to in licensing. So if we had like contact people specific, so that you know that you can go to them to learn about so and so, that might be helpful.
Also, in that context, have an additional list that's alphabetic. Say like somebody's needing to know about AP. Just go to AP on Nathan. They need to learn about foreign exchange students. Oh, that's Carl. Oh, just alphabetic all the way through, all the things after having the list, I think would help, would stop us from going through each name, all the things they do, to see if it really is
search
actual.
the document too for it.
See what I mean? Just kind of something like that.
Sometimes we see areas in which we can overlap with other disciplines or other sections, but we don't. We're not always aware of them. I wonder if maybe in your Wednesday weekly there was a very brief section that said, "Okay, digital teaching and learning boot camp in San Pete County this week." Math workshop with teachers up in Cache this week, or whatever. Just a real brief statement, so I knew what other organizations were doing, so I could connect with them and say, "Oh, by the way, there's some instructional materials that might work for you in that area."
Piggyback off of the weekly Wednesday, we were just thinking Karen's weekly email, where we have 4 teams within our department. If she took one team each week and asked certain questions, it may be the same question every month, but it may be something different each month, and just helping us to get to know what the team's working on during that month. And then there may be another way to give her feedback on, if there's a lot of questions for that team, they become part of the staff meeting spotlight almost, and those are the questions that we have them answer.
So we started talking about something similar to like the table idea about having teams or individuals with like big projects that they're working on, whether they're time focused or like collaboration potential or whatever that looks like. And Lisa had the interesting idea that connects with what Eric was mentioning, which is like if there was a big topic that was focused on during the meeting, and then individuals could bring the initiatives that they're like engaged in that relate to that topic. That might be a way to, as opposed to let collaboration happen kind of passively, it's almost like an active collaboration opportunity.
That's crazy.
I'm not sure if this is piggybacking on that, but one of the things that we do at SCAS is it's like looking to support and looking for support. So in thinking about that collaborative space of being like, what are the things that we are, like, I really love the conversation that Sid had this morning and thinking about, I'm looking for that kind of support in the math world. And so I would love to go look and see what that looks like. So we could either put it out as, I'm looking for collaborators in this area, but also saying I have experience in this other area.
So I think next steps for me, and if you have more thoughts, we can take those in a second, is to take that, probably take it to the coordinators, and we can come up with some potential solutions to bring back to you about how we could address some of these concerns or needs, and then see how we kind of operationalize this moving forward. and we'll bring that back to meetings so that you can weigh in on those solutions. My goal is not to add burden to you. That isn't of value if we add some additional. So if we say, okay, let's get a page that at least says your name, has a picture, and what you do here, that people can use as a tool, we can do that in a staff meeting. So those types of things. Try to use this time wisely so that you're not adding to your burden outside of the 3 hours we spend this week and the 2.5 hours we spend in specialist meeting for the session. Sound okay? That's the next step. Go with 100. Great. So just know we will revisit this. If you have other thoughts that kind of come as you sit and kind of, sometimes when I bring topics, I don't know what I have better ideas that come later because you haven't been thinking about them as long as I have. And so feel free if your brain kind of ruminates on ideas and you need more thinking time, feel free to drop an email or stop by and add to the conversation. All right, so I wanted to get some feedback on how the end of the week email is going. I think we just have one suggestion of something we could add, which is a team summary of, okay, for the humanities team, here's theirs, here's the STEM team, and maybe each week it's a different team summary because we have 4 teams and we can kind of do that and have one each week. Might be an additional piece. What I'd like you to do is talk at your tables and kind of share how you see those going, what's going well, what could be used for improvement. Because that is becoming kind of one of our really standard ways of communicating. And this is your opportunity. If you didn't read last week's email, which I think came Wednesday because Karen was going to be on vacation, you can pull that up now from Karen to get to your end of weekly update if you need a refresher on what those have been looking like. It's only been a couple of weeks since we kind of retooled them just a little bit to serve our purpose a little greater. So just getting a little feedback now, and then probably in a month we'll revisit it one more time, but wanted to get some initial feedback. Kimberly?
I'm not on that email list.
You're not on the email list? That is a problem. Will you ask? Anyone else not on the list? I'm glad you said something, because that's how we communicate. So, it's an important one. Well, you can talk. You don't have to pull it up. You know what it looks like.
She's had a lot of Botox.
I think it's been good.
I drew this part, Melanie finished the rest of it.
I didn't really like my drawing. I think he expected more Ariel-esque. Or Sally from
You want to take notes on this part? We can how we want to adjust them?
Is it all like this?
Yeah, hyperlinks and stuff.
Or some kind of
Hit the colors.
8 sections that's broken up in a way that makes sense.
Start reading pink.
About Karen's right.
About pink, you move on.
I see there was like how about a live stream or maybe suppose like football sports. Right. Yeah.
Like March,
Oh.
I don't think it accomplishes what it needs to.
This is brief. It's just kind of doing your knowledge, whatever.
But it's the same format, it will be so easy to see.
and I like. No, let's go a little further.
Hi, Todd. Did I say that too loud? Sorry.
Listening into you.
I appreciate it. Who's drawing?
Whether it's like field day,
This is from Outcasts. Fire.
and it seems like now that we have staff,
Maybe Outcasts are handy.
whatever it's called, even
You guys, are you guys like
that?
Just need to remind us.
How hard is it? Is it worth Karen's time? Is there something she could do that will help us?
I have anxiety. I feel like my anxiety levels as a person
The Reader's Digest version of
I like feel anxious when I supposed to be.
Oh yeah. I was talking about the links go up.
I don't know if there's
That's what they do.
that goes feeder,
Or if I am going to
this is always, you always have to close it, right? I always add extra time.
Yeah,
it's scheduled to enter time.
Which one?
Oh, the one
I
by
look at
Kathy
it and I'm like,
And decides to fail.
And then the
so whatever,
calendar.
like, hey, like, boring.
In 2 hours, I suppose.
Did you miss my
I didn't mean to send that to you.
She was just ranting and then detailing.
Someone filmed
Guess what it says? Guess what it says?
Come on back.
Distance. Or,
Right, Karen's gonna take the notes on this one. She does most of the week. I know we're working on a fun name. So you made some submissions, thank you. It's always better if we have a good name for it. Okay, feedback on how it's going thus far, knowing we are in our first kind of refinement stage, so. Jonathan.
I think sort of the sum of what we talked about was essentially right now it has about the maximum amount of information. I'm kind of hesitant to add to it, just because
Quantity is already.
Yeah, it seems to be an effective balance.
and just recognizing a lot of things that might need feedback or something like that it might be more effective to do in person here, because a lot of people when they get that email on Friday or whatever probably might not respond at that time, and then they forget, and then that might be what you get out of it.
The feedback opportunity is more in like a face-to-face setting.
I overheard a lot of people make comments about the colors and how they appreciate the color coding. So if you start reading blue and it doesn't apply to you, or you don't like it, you know where to skip to get to the next portion.
Yeah.
So I like that. A detail team came up with a crazy idea. If sometimes you go into a business and they have like TVs mounted with things scrolling and information on them, maybe in TNL we have a TV that has some of these things just scrolling through them. So as we're walking around, we're just seeing them being reminded as opposed to referencing one email each week.
An effective way to spend the $1.7 million.
Right? Or that group.
There are some extra TVs from the boardroom being remodeled that we could probably claim. It would just be the mounting, but.
I appreciate being reminded to fill out my time card, even though it's impossible to actually log into the system to do it.
Yeah, like updated scores.
It's so 20th century.
Maybe we can use some of our carryover to fix that.
Silent protest, but we don't go by hand. Paper time cards.
All right. I mean, I know we've only been a couple weeks in, so it doesn't sound like anything too major. Quantity, we're there. Quality is great. We'll just continue to refine a little bit. And it sounds like thinking about what goes in a memo versus what needs to be discussed is kind of one piece I'm taking away. All right. Thank you for that initial feedback, and we'll revisit in a month or two when we have a little bit more time. Just want to make sure it meets your needs and it's getting what we need across. All right. I think that is it for support staff. So we'll give them just a moment to say thank you. I get to go get my work done now. While the rest of us stick around.
I've got to get a sweatshirt. And we have this crazy one. We were getting one, right? Like this.
Yeah, I'll try to call them again today.
Thank you. It's all good. I know.
Filing's on track.
You are alone at a table you need to move. Now that you have people left, you might be alone. So if you'll find a new space with more friends. Okay, we started in on the competency conversation last time after a few months off. I just wanted to give you an update of where we are and where we'll be headed so you can anticipate the future. So I reached out to Leah and Talia to start thinking about this common definition for competencies that's relative to the agency, not TNL. So that as we start talking educator competency out in the state level, that it's not that we have it defined one way and their departments are defining it a different way, but that we have a shared kind of vision for that. So I met with special ed on Friday and took them through the same exercise you all went through of trying to come up with a common definition. And their definitions are in our drive. So if you're curious of what they turned out to look like, you can find them in here. There, I think I put them on our August stuff. And so their definitions ended up in here. So if you're curious of what that looks like, and then we'll be doing definitions for, I think this is anyway, they're in there somewhere. We'll be taking CTE next Monday. Is going to do the exact same exercise. And basically what we come up with, we had 4 shared definitions across our team. Special ed had 5 just because their group was pretty large. And then CTE will probably have a couple given their group is smaller. And then taking those 11-ish definitions and trying to come to one will just be a smaller team from each department. So it'll be 2 or 3 T&L, 2 or 3 SPED, probably 1 or 2 CTE, and coming to one kind of draft definition for the agency that then we'll bring back to each team for feedback. But rather than making everyone go through all 11, we'll have a smaller subcommittee kind of go through it and propose to use some language for the official agency definition. But that is the next step at this point. The special ed ones were really thoughtful, the way that they defined theirs, and I think had some elements that we in general education space maybe haven't thought as considerable with some of the language that they chose. So I think there'll be some value of getting everyone's kind of language in there even. So just know that's happening. Any questions about that process at this point? Oh no, okay. All right, so we'll come back to it after those definitions and the draft is coming. And then probably I'm gonna expect most likely our full staff meeting in October, I'll have that draft definition of what we're thinking as an agency for feedback from teaching and learning. So that's what we made. And then we'll also kind of have the why conversation. Hopefully one thing you're noticing is the thread of we're moving towards competency for students. So moving in a similar parallel pathway for teachers. And trying to keep that kind of space continuous and similar is one of the reasons for this work. All right, the next thing that I'd like you to pull up the document so that you can actually read it because the font is pretty small up here, is the professional learning for the Utah Core Standards Implementation Plan. This originally looked like, I'm going to pull up the old version, flashback to May because it's been a while since we had the first one. It looked like this initially, with the boxes and the cloud and all of that. After meeting with all of you, it now looks like what it looks like now, which is a little bit different and intended to represent the ideas you shared with me and kind of communicate those more effectively to the field, hopefully. So those of you that have kind of worked with me on this, the goal is to take this to curriculum directors at the end of the month and get their feedback on the plan so that we can move forward and start rolling at our level. So this is my attempt to kind of communicate the purpose and then move through the components. The components are very similar. I think a lot of the conversations we had added to the image and the information. Let's just kind of work from the top. So I'll have you read the purpose statement.
Jennifer, can I ask you a really quick question about the title?
Yes, please.
Just why Utah Core Standards and why not just Utah Standards Implementation?
In our department, we are considered the core standards versus like CTE is not considered a core. The way it's defined in code is not a core standard. If we start blending with CTE or other standards, then we can take the core off, but the content areas in our department are considered core standards. So and hopefully we can start broadening people's language around what core means, that it's not ELA, math, and science, but that it's all of the core content areas. Code defines it more broadly than ELA, math, and science.
So that was kind of a question I had when I saw on the agenda professional learning standards. I went, what are we talking about? We don't know anything about a discussion with professional learning standards, and it looks different here, which is great. I just want to put in a little bit of a caution about where we link standards with professional learning so they don't get confused.
Thank you for that. Okay. All right. So from the purpose, just basically trying to give teachers tools so that they can do their job more effectively. One of the things that came out of the conversation with all of you was that in the old days when we did professional learning, we used to give them tools and have them use our tools to be their instruction. In this kind of reiteration of offering professional learning, we're going to get them to use their tools, and we might model with tools that they don't have, but then getting them to leverage their own curricular resources to improve their practice. So it's not that they need the picture book we used or the math lesson we just did, but they then go to their materials and implement the same strategies in the curriculum that they have available. So it's not about everybody having the tools that we use, but that they use the strategies modeled so that they can leverage whatever curricular resources they have. One of the pieces of feedback from the LEAs is they're like, we don't need you taking them out of the millions of dollars of materials we purchased for them and having them use your materials. And so trying to come to that kind of piece is why it's verbalized the way that I tried to represent that. So hopefully that makes more sense to you. It may not stand alone without that kind of background, but it's really meant to say, we're going to help you use your tools more effectively, the ones you already have available. Not saying we can't share tools that are out there that might be of value to them, but our goal is to help them leverage their current resources in the same method. Thoughts on the purpose statement? Let me have you actually talk to your partner. Is there anything missing from that purpose statement? Let's not wordsmith. You may not love my verbiage. It's going to be okay. But conceptually, is there anything missing or needs to be added or deleted from that initial purpose? You haven't had prior conversations. Talk with your partner on that for 1 minute.
I don't want
I like resources.
Hey, Jennifer.
I made it work.
Pre-K is more accurate.
We're just wondering.
Like the plural. Yeah,
it's the prep for
Yep. Thank you. This is the editing stuff that needs to happen. Yeah.
We changed the pre-K up here to preschool as well.
Okay, thank you. Because you guys aren't, we're not going to offer it from 0 to preschool.
I know, but preschool
is
is
have to finish that.
pre-K is only 4.
I get you.
The arts. And no, the arts.
Okay. Yep.
The arts. The end. The arts.
Not that should technically just be driver education.
Okay.
Not drivers.
You want the arts to say.
Want the arts to say either fine arts or dance, theater, music. This is the 5. I don't know.
I'm going to fine arts. Fine arts.
You wouldn't want to just.
How about just
To say fine and performing arts.
Isn't that
Not too much.
That's what you do. I'll see if it'll fit.
Yeah.
Don't have any problems.
That's it.
Short version.
Thank you. Or it's not great. It's fine art.
It says yes, we recognize.
Yeah, potentially. It throws off my balance. Right? All right. Any big ideas for that top purpose statement, Carl? Besides grammatical, language-based changes.
Just the idea that you brought up with the LEAs that they're wanting their folks to recognize their resources, and I'm just wondering if word current is to be eliminated so that and then in that space discuss with the CDs so that they can understand that you are recognizing that, but because we don't want them to be leveraging just their current but additional. I don't know, just an idea in that bigger picture of things. Just leveraging their resources.
Sorry, but it says resources.
We got that one already, but we're not in that box yet, but yes.
Sorry.
We'll get there. I didn't even notice that.
Some groups put-
Review the department. Yeah.
What if we replace current with evidence-based?
What was that?
So leveraging their evidence-based resources. So still just going back to that, those high quality things that their LEAs have provided and vetted and not
Right.
other
Yeah.
places.
I like it. So I can get away from teachers, pay teachers. Okay, I think those are good additions. And thanks for walking through. This is ultimately going to impact all of you. So I just want to make sure we can communicate well to the field what the plan is, because ultimately you have to do the same presentation with your people at some point. So the next part is just what content areas are specifically called out. DTL will be integrating within this, so it's more the digital teaching and learning as an embedded structure. Yeah.
Sorry, we were still debating one thing on the purpose. We just wanted to throw out quickly before we move on. For all of us, when we read it, the word aiding kind of stood out as maybe not the most impactful word, whether it's like empowering educators or more like visionary.
Empowering educators to leverage.
I like that.
We take out a couple of syllables too.
Thank you. All right, so content areas, we've got a few changes on that just from a pedagogical focus, from thinking about our data and listening to the conversations as I met with you. Our focus for the professional learning for this coming group will be scaffolding instruction so that all students have access to core instruction. Until we have better numbers for our English learner population and our special education students, we have some areas of improvement for teachers to change their practice to make sure that students can access the curriculum more fully. And our data is definitely suggesting that, and a number of you brought that out in the conversations we had. So that is the pedagogical focus that I was going to propose to you all be our pedagogical focus for the year. And basically what that will mean is that we will embed scaffolding supports and model what that looks like with our professional learning offerings so that we will show people what scaffolding could look like in the content area that they choose. So whether I'm in driver's education or world language or English language arts, there are techniques that can work. And that will be the area that we've also trained your designers and facilitators on as part of their preparation to be a designer or facilitator, is that they have some more global knowledge around what we mean. So we have common language and common vision of what scaffolding looks like. It's not, well, I'm going to give you 5 problems and you get 10. That's not scaffolding. Like, so making sure that when they are going out and sharing scaffolding techniques, that they would be scaffolding techniques we would actually want brought to teachers. Thoughts on that? Pushback on that, because that is a choice that I've made based on our conversations. So,
Having access to core instruction or having access to quality or effective core instruction.
we could add the adjective, but the whole point is just
access.
Yeah, but yeah, I would hope it's quality. We all know it's not in every place, so we could add that as a qualifier for sure. Robert, did you have something? Sorry, I saw you.
Nope, I just had the excellent as a word for to go between two and core. Effective, excellent, something. I mean, I just feel like access to core instruction is not enough, I don't think.
To quality or effective core instruction.
Right.
And it doesn't change what it means. That she always says each student, all students. And I've heard her explain the difference between each and all, or each and every. So it'd be each student has. Anyway.
It depends on the documents now. She used to be more on that than they are now, but yeah, it is about each student in this case, right? So, okay, all right. We're okay with scaffolding being the thing, because that will be the thing that we promote as everything in our being, above, in line with your content. So what I hopefully is the visual depicting. It's both, right? It's not we're going to focus on content or pedagogy. It's going to be a combination. It's going to be that pedagogical piece within the content that you choose to focus on. Okay. All right, so moving down, taking those pieces, then we build that cadre of designers and facilitators who can then design the professional learning and facilitate it out in those regional pieces or in more local settings. And so the one thing that I wanted to do is add the partnership piece. And many of you talked about partnering with universities, organizations that you already work with, and that part's not really represented here. So I'll add a little recruited LEA educators and partnerships with others or something, and partnerships maybe to serve, because they can definitely help us with design and facilitation depending on your settings. Not that they have to. You don't have to partner with other people, but a lot of you already suggested you have partnerships that you would like to leverage in this. So I do want to add that to that middle thing. Resources, we will fix. Any other thoughts about the CPEC section? And yes, I have made it an acronym because it's fast. And then moving down, I took the same kind of ideas and tried to structure them a little differently. Tried to be a little more specific about what the summer implementation institutes look like through kind of a questioning piece of when, what, why, how, and that kind of thing. Trying to give some information to the curriculum directors of what to expect. Knowing we haven't fleshed this out enough to be super specific, but we have some generalities that we can share at this point. And then we have the year-long supports, things that you will be doing in your own spaces across the school year that will continue to kind of be developed and available, and then how they could leverage the CPEC for their own desires and capacity in their own LEAs. So getting them to realize those people don't only help us at the state level, but should be people you would want to send to us to be able to continue to build their capacity to be helpful at the local level. So thoughts on the bottom section. If you want to talk first, or if you want to just shout out whatever works. Should give you more information at this point as well, based on what you guys talked with me about.
In the what? I'm wondering if integration has a place there. Well, it's content specific. Integration is a wonderful
and something we're going to really try and do with DTL, and I know PE and Health wanted to do it that way, and I think you even thought about integration in your own, in the arts, even though there won't be an arts section, it'll be integrating it into the other content areas. I'm trying to think where, I'll just make a note of it and play with it a little bit.
Yeah, because content, big on how big picture things are instead of content specific.
Could the review instructional materials be put on?
Sarah?
Will this be tied into the systems conference, or will that be
I talked to Kim about that, and we're going to still have some further discussions, but potentially. I don't think they actually want to continue that conference in the same way. So it might actually replace to some level. So we still have to work through some of those details, but I did start the conversation on that.
For the LEA networks, are they all anticipated to be geographically similar, or are there other reasons that they would be similarly networked?
So I'm going to propose to them a network based on the principal networks map that David and Lisa have developed, that would be their network. And so they can work within their geographical piece.
And that's solely geographic?
Yes, it is at this point. The charters that want to partner, I mean, they can obviously partner outside of it, but trying to even encourage them in some direction. At this point, I was thinking geographically. If there's a better idea, that I'm totally open to it. It's just a lot of them, like Murray is so small, they have a hard time doing all of their own professional learning. So they've done a really good job at, like, they go to this for Davis, they go here from Salt Lake, they go to Kansas for this, and they, welcome people from other LEAs, but being a little more intentional with those networks and saying, this is your team. So at curriculum director meeting, what you'll notice is I have 3 different grouping structures we'll be using. So sometimes they'll come in and they'll sit with their LEA network. Sometimes they'll come in and sit with their job alike in a similar sized district. So you're a 500 kids school district, you're gonna sit at this table. So that there's some different talking points. So I can't remember the third grouping structure. So 3 different grouping structures, and we'll rotate in the meeting for different types of networking structures to try and give them what they're asking for, because they don't love when Granite's sitting with 4 charters. They're like, but there's opportunities. They want networking, but it needs to be effective networking. So
yeah, I like the idea a lot of grouping based on geography. We've done something similar within detail at times, and some of the feedback we've received is that is not always the best. And so that was my thinking of with the way it's written. It's kind of it strictly is geographically, but geographically or otherwise similar LEAs or something may open it up. But I like the intent of going up where you're going.
I think
it could just.
Is there a way to engage because they are geographic, the regional service centers?
yeah, so they've been engaged in it. They're willing to support. So I might be able to call them out maybe in that LEA network where it makes sense. But I met with all of the regional service centers heads, and we went through not this version of the graphic, but the old one. And they were very supportive of the idea.
I think you could just drop geographically similar and just say LEA's partner to offer local professional learning.
Okay.
Because it refers to local, so that assumes that they're in proximity.
Maybe just drop that. Okay, so delete.
Fair. And I was going to say one thing I understand sometimes maybe the districts and charters maybe don't want to mix based on the way their systems work.
For students.
And like if you're a Paiute, it probably is run quite similar. But one thing I was thinking of, it's nice when they understand, like, they may not like working together as adults, but for kids, the kids are going between those locations back and forth. So it's understanding that these are our kids, not just Granite's kids versus this charter.
Yeah, and that's the conversation we'll have curriculum directors meeting to try and promote this. Is that it's not about your kids, it's about all of the kids. And those kids might not be in you this week, but they might be next week. And so the more we can do to make sure all teachers have quality professional learning, the better off all of our kids will be. Each and every.
I'm wondering if under the LEA networks where it says USB created resources, I understand that it's talking about professional learning. Wondering if that could potentially get construed where we're trying to emphasize teachers using LEA resources. So maybe saying USB created supports or similar to that.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah, resources is money.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Jolie?
I like that center one. I didn't think of this when Erica said that about resources. In my mind, I was thinking that maybe what you were referencing is things like core guides and the exemplar assessments. And I'm just wondering if there's some way of being able to take that center box and
probably just instead of create resource USBs, year-long supports.
Something,
just
yeah.
Connect the title to it, maybe.
Maybe to connect those.
Yeah.
But
That's
even,
what I am referring to. Is
Yeah,
like
that's
this, especially that bottom piece that will have tools for them to use throughout the year. Okay.
Jennifer, on that last bullet, you need to remove the word use. Does not read well, but without use, you were good.
oh, to use to provide. Last bullet.
Just to provide.
Right.
I got it.
To provide.
I don't even have to make the changes. I just have to go tell Barbara to make the changes. So it's gonna be a long list. She's gonna be like, "What happened?" I told her refinements were coming. So yeah.
On that same bullet, just to make it shorter because it seems kind of wordy, just professional learning resources for LEAs, because it already says year-long sports. So I don't think.
Oh, here's what I'm trying to
ongoing or
accomplish in that
throughout.
statement. So help me do it. But that we will have resources that come out for like 2 or 3 times a year for the ongoing professional learning. So that it's not just the summer, but we have follow-up pieces that continue throughout the year. So that's what
ongoing
Just say ongoing professional learning
resources and trainings, or
stay connected to, because it's not meant to be like a whole different topic. So let's say you were doing the 3D, right? Whatever you kind of focus on in the summer, we would continue to provide resources in that same vein. So like we'll continue on scaffolding, we'll continue on the 3-dimensional and whatever focus you chose, because 3-dimensional is large, right? That those resources will be ongoing and focus back on what we started in the summer. So it's
Building
not
on the
changing
summer.
throughout the year. So I don't.
But you're building on what you learned in the
Yeah.
summer. So
Yeah.
I don't think it is necessary. If it's ongoing professional learning resources, you're the one who set up what it is to begin with, and if it varies year to year, I don't think there has to be a descriptor there.
You'll also have people that don't get to participate in the summer, but might be participating.
Exactly.
Later. So if
Yeah,
they feel
they're
they have to
meant to be
participate in the summer,
standalone, but they leverage the same themes.
So you
Maybe that's
could-
more for you guys to know than LTAs, but it's not meant to be separate. It's meant to be like an enhancement to, and whether they went to summer or not, that they can still access the information.
Ongoing access. I was going to say.
Yeah, that's it.
You could say ongoing professional learning resources to support LEA implementation throughout the year.
Thanks for being so. Okay, we made it through, I think. I guess at this point, it's making sure that you all are willing to not fake support this, but have real support for this model. I don't want to get to a point where it's like, I thought we were all on the same page. This is the point to have a conversation that if you can't get behind where we're headed, we need to chat. Because I want this to be of value to you and what you're trying to accomplish in your roles. But we just haven't had a resource to do that that's coherent across our team. And our LEAs are done kind of putting up with not knowing what to expect, I guess is probably the best way that I can verbalize the feedback I've received. Ricky?
the only question I guess I have is back to the first box on the left. Is that if a district is paying for their teacher to participate maybe $200 for a 4-day course, how seems to be kind of self-sustaining in that a lot of money set aside to kind of start this. You're going to run it kind of like as a first year, less expensive, and start kind of building it up to make it more sustainable.
It depends. So in terms of like carryover, we can do this for a couple of years and not worry about it. I just don't know the size and scale that we need yet. So I'm putting up $50, not knowing. We might just need enough to cover lunch, honestly, and we might cover resources. Or if we start out with you're basically paying for the full opportunity and we don't need to leverage resources that aren't here in 2 years, then we can spend our money differently than supporting this, which we need to get out of the business of supporting this ultimately. If they have PL dollars, they just need to know that they can invest them in a purposeful way that's coming and predictable, which they haven't been able to do in the past. So we'll have to see what they think about the money side of the house. Right now, I'm estimating we can budget about $1 million between what we have set aside and what special ed is willing to give. When they did Core Academy, it was $1.2 million. That was a very small subset of teachers, and we're asking for a much broader subset of teachers. And so that's my concern, is like just not knowing the fiscal impact of this quite yet, because I don't know how many sessions you want to run in how many locations with how many people. It makes it hard.
We may not know either. Like I'm still thinking about in my head registration, right? Like here's where we have the plan currently with dates, but is it potentially a possibility to say if our numbers are 200 for some reason, like one region, to be like, we've opened another section, right? I mean,
right.
I guess still based on our capacity or the capacity of our CPEC people, right?
Exactly. Well, that's the first discussion we'll probably have with the design team, is really thinking through each of the specialists are going to have to come up with what they would like to do, and then looking at that from a big picture of what can we actually fiscally handle this first year. And I talked with Max, and I was like, he's like, build what you can handle, not what you want, ultimately. So starting out in a way that we might scale it up over time, but making it small enough that we can fail to some level and still not have people go, I will never attend that again. But we know some of it's not going to work out very well. Just due to the, whenever you do something the first time, it's never as good as the second. Like when I ran the competency conversation with SPED, it was amazing because I got to teach it a second time, right? Versus my experience with you all. So it's that opportunity to do better the second time. Like when you were a middle school teacher and you got to teach things, by the end of the day, you were so good at it. That first period, those poor children. So that kind of thing I expect, but we'll have to think scale-wise, what can we manage, what can we handle? Yeah. And then recruitment, we need people to be able to do all of this too, and what can we recruit? So I met a teacher at the pedicure place yesterday. She seems amazing, so she's going to reach out. Other thoughts? So are we in support enough that you can speak positively about this and not throw it under the bus, ultimately, is all I guess I'm asking for at this point. We'll bring it to curriculum directors at the end of this month for their feedback and further refinements. I think it's pretty good from what I have heard from them. I think they'll be pretty happy with it, but there's always a curveball I'm sure that will come in.
I'm wondering kind of along the idea that we've been talking about numbers, because it really, what are we going for? If maybe we talk to curriculum directors and say, what are you thinking for this first year? Are you thinking maybe teacher leaders? Are you thinking you'd like more of your teachers to come so that we can kind of get some idea?
Very forthcoming.
I was just wondering, so September curriculum directors are sharing this with curriculum directors. Do you want us to wait to share with our content coordinators? Or?
Yes, in this case, just because I want that for this particular one, lots of times I'm like, yeah, go ahead. But because this one really needs to be framed by the curriculum directors in case they significantly want the model changed, if you can hold until, and it might be an email after the fact and then like discussion at your next meeting, which might be a couple months out. But we do want people to know, but I don't want the curriculum directors to think it's set in stone until we actually take it to them to set in stone. And nothing's really set in stone, but stone enough. Yeah.
So with the summer implementation institutes, help me visualize exactly what that is. Is that the Literacy Academy and the STEM, and are they all separate? Or is our intent to do the integration at that time? Is it yes to all?
I guess it's like Core Academy, but better.
Tell me about Core Academy. I remember it. I've been there.
So Core Academy used to be like 4 days. You would come and get professional learning for 4 days straight, and you would leave. My hope is that we can provide the ongoing support that the PLS would encourage us to do. But it's meant to be flexible. So the arts might do 2 days of professional learning, and a teacher can take 2 days of a different content area that's running. Like, we're going to try and make this make sense so that if a teacher wants to do all 4 days but wants to do a couple content areas and there's flexibility in that, they can. Let's say I'm a social studies and a language teacher. I might have the opportunity to participate in both 1 year rather than, because some of the sessions, some of you don't want 4 days, like totally good. But this flexibility of what the content specialist needs in terms of quantity of time, but really meant to be the kind of sustained focus professional learning like we had in the Core Academy days. So not necessarily replacing like the administrator institutes at this point, but really focus on educators. Leaders, I talked to the leadership team. I think we'll bring them in eventually, but given they have a lot of new stuff running, it didn't seem like the opportune time to bring leaders into the conversation. But definitely in the future, thinking about what are the look-fors for a principal when they're watching your content areas instruction. That's what a lot of principals do. So things like that we could put forth in the future.
So instructional coaches.
Coaches would make sense. Teachers would make sense. Leaders are welcome. I mean, they can still learn. It's just not going to be targeted towards their particular. Okay. Any questions that if you don't feel like you know enough, you can always direct to me. Happy to take them now, of course. But I'm taking this to Patty and Darren today for their feedback, and then we'll take it to her. Once curriculum directors have weighed in, we'll start rolling. We have to start getting dates, number of things that we need, and recommendations from the LEAs. I think at this point, recruitment, that's one of the conversations I'll have with curriculum directors at the end of September. How would they like to see us do recruitment from their perspective? Because we want them to be able to leverage these people back in their LEA when they're done with us or when they're working with us, so that they don't just become state helpers, but they actually can help their LEA. So somehow they need to know who's going to be invited or participating, and they need to be somewhat in the vetting process too, because I don't want to hire people they would never use back in their own setting. That seems contrary to what we're trying to accomplish here, is building capacity at a broader level. Okay, let's move on to the next step for today, which is really looking at, this is the design team so far, who's going to kind of lead out in terms of making some of those decisions. All the decisions will be brought to the full staff or specialist meeting, but these people will be the ones helping to make those decisions.
With recruitment, you just confused me a little bit. So is the CPEC training happening outside of the workshop, or are those like the people that are coming and they're being trained or put at and then they're going to be able to implement it throughout the year?
So we'll train them earlier so that they can design and facilitate based on that training content.
So they're going to be the ones doing the training at the institute and then throughout the year as well. Okay.
Also going to be advancing invitations to finance to make sure we don't run into any barriers as we progress through that. 2 LEA reps, so we have some local agencies kind of weighing in. USU rep, Max or Parker, is going to kind of be involved. Their perspective, they've got the schools of the future and have some buy-in to all of this. And then Midas, somebody, either Rick or JC, will kind of have to help because we have a lot of Midas components that will be part of it. And then anyone other that I'm not thinking of that you think needs to be on this? Content and the support staff, these are our 3 leads that will really do the heavy lifting of logistics and organization. Your support staff will still do some of the work, but we need kind of this higher level management from those staff. Okay. So I'm working with Leah on all of it. So we could probably get some USBE other departments involved. That might be a good next step.
Can you put me on the other side? Oh, trust those other people.
He's changed his mind. He saw the list and said, "Oh, never mind. I need to be there." All right. So, just hoping to have more time for this today, but that's okay. We can at least get your team started and figure out what this looks like, and then we meet in specialist meeting. We can actually do the work. So we kind of got started last time talking about trying to build out a resource so that all of us can be benefited by having tools available when it comes our turn to do standards. And so in the standard revision folder, there are folders of resources related to if there is anything. So I'm going to start with one that has some. So step 2, these are things that have been used in the past to help build out templates that make sense. So you were sent an email on Friday, and I know it was a long weekend, so if you didn't get to it, you can do that today, to sign up for which step you would like to be part of a team on. Haven't had an opportunity, please go in and fill in where you might want to work. And if there's only a singleton, we might have to move. This is a very large team. Look at you. I might have to go through and see how it goes. Yeah, because you can only be on so many given.
Voluntold us.
How to be. Well, you just have to work. So it's knowing, well, this team's going to get started and I'm on this team too. So it's just trying to coordinate those efforts. I do want to start with the work that we can get somewhere. So taking a look at your teams, like if you haven't signed up for one, you are going to be voluntold to sign up for number 1. And at least a couple of you, just since Alan's the only one there. That one actually will be a pretty easy one to do. And then step 2 looks like a good group. Step 3, overlap yet, so that's nice. And I think step 3, Robert just kind of process of. So this one we need a template for like process too, but that's I actually think that's a good sized group for that one, just given the complexity of that particular one. So I off of that. And 5. Split yourselves up pretty well. So I think this. What I would say is, why don't you start with one of your groups, because I know you have 2. Let's start in the steps that make the most sense. So given Robert's hot in the middle of 3, maybe we're looking at supporting with 4 to get started. Robert, would that be of most value to you?
Yep.
Okay. 4, we're going to start there, and 5. So if you're in group 4 or 5, let's start with that group. And then pre-K, you guys are at 7. Almost.
Still kind of in 5, but the others have been, well, you're right, we're at 7. Okay. So we need to move to 8.
So let's do 7, 8. Yeah. Another J team.
And we got 3 of the J pod in there. Jimmy's got to join.
So let's start with 4 times 8 or 7, 8, 9. And then if you don't have a group out of those, come chat with me and we'll figure it out. But 4 and 5 are most of time essence for Robert's process, and 7, 8, 9 are of most time essence for preschool. So I want to make sure we keep in line with them, and then we'll catch any steps that we don't get along the way. But to really support staff, it makes sense to just do what's needed at the time rather than go in order or whatever. So let's take a moment, meet with your team, get some initial ideas in the next 5 minutes of where you want to be headed, how you guys want to proceed. We will work in specialist meeting in 2 weeks on this, so you can plan on coming then. But looking at what step you're assigned, the initial discussion, like what are the things that might make sense, and maybe just talking through those, and you can type them in this document if you want, like under number 4. Here are the things we think we need in our group. Let's just take the last part of the meeting today to think through what are the documents you might want to make, just so people can start wrapping their heads around what the work will look like in a couple of weeks. Sound okay? If you're not on 4, 5, 7, 8, or 9, come see. Pick which one you feel like is the one for you today. It's hard to be in 2 places at once.
I'm gonna go over to Jay.
I was just gonna say, Jody, I need you.
Okay, it's been decided.
You're the one with the experience in there. So
It's nice to be especially when I'm
really
often working too. Especially when I'm often not.
You see that?
And you only get me for like 4 minutes because I have to go up and have a conversation. Are you guys almost done? We have a meeting that in like 5 minutes in here.
Well, we start at noon. Our meeting goes till noon. So.
Oh.
And I saw that.
I'm 5 and 8, but 8, 5 will be
which one's the
5?
Sarah, are you doing 4 or 5?
So I did add, if you look in step 8's folder, so if you look into my folders, I added things that I gave to the board on my review. Yes. So I picked the 2 spots. So 5 and 8 were spots that I felt that I had good praise from the board when I did my appraisal. So they really liked my report.
I'm gonna have you actually visually record what you.
So, and then they really liked my update for anyway, so if you went to the document, I think it would be more helpful than me just trying to explain what the document is. Go to 8, yeah, folder 8. Yep, and then yes.
Right, well, 4, I mean, basically.
I'm gonna have you visually record what you do, so you can bring things to the meeting.
So, this is 8.
Just like number, whatever standard you are and what tasks you're doing on this work group.
and I gave them significant feedback, some challenges they had, and I gave them, so just a really good summary. Just 4? About that. Because with what my standards were on, there were things that were going to blow up in conversations, like other thing is there is so for example, some of the locations that I went to more
so the idea about
required. I was technically told I had to go to more than was required. So you're only required to 3. I went to standards plus access PCA, charter directors, curriculum directors.
Yes. Recommended by the
I was told I had to add another
Speaker of the House. She's on their education.
Yes. So the board right before review, you have to
should they have stuff provided to them before?
well actually like
If anybody can.
so it's like so this particular one though.
The standards document themselves with guiding
What
questions.
happened? So I had all my questions. It's the actual some of the responses. Yes, I have them memorized.
And make sure we get
I have this whole thing. It's like
basic
burned
structure.
in my brain.
They understand standards are curriculum that's very often a major and whether you give people let's say you give homework, please make sure this is important. Do we do homework or do we because they won't do it. So right? So
a lot of the comments
and then do we need to especially present
how you make their
is that already biasing because we're bringing in
what's the point?
or just let facilitate
It's not
it's already been decided.
Yeah, so so that feedback is relative.
Have to be selected.
Now, all of the feedback was every single of all of those. I don't know what I do feel like you can provide a ton of meetings that were available. This is what led to also the survey response. Guiding questions to help them. Response was put onto an Excel sheet. You could have it with how the says no one else wanted to read it. No one else wanted to make some responses.
I think there's got to be some structure to it.
And then the writing committee.
Judge how they value
A whole day. I just sent it back to you. Okay.
So I have a children that just signed like an agenda. So I have a survey template, an idea of what you put into.
So Survey Monkey created the survey template for me. But we don't do Survey Monkey anymore. We do something else. We lost our permission to publish. Yes.
Maybe we just say
And you're also in group 6.
Yeah, we lost our like
Ricky, Carrie,
user rights. Which was so fun.
Step 4 is because basically like standards are going to review based on this time track. This rubric scoring says it's been quite a while since
guideline.
This question is here's
The real question is for a minute, and I'm explaining myself to share that.
Guideline for
and based on the special set of the number that says
oh, this is
it's a trigger or
Right, because at the
how
end,
the question is
so
what do we do we
it's probably
in the template document says
so this was at the end, and I did kind of mention that to him, right? I said that right, we met and discussed how do we revise the standards based on feedback. So I think that yes was the thing, right? That was an obvious okay, that was a big deal, let's fix it.
what are the format amendments? Now that's true that there
With
is
parentheses, right, to make sure that everyone knows what you do with your parents.
standards. It used to be like
Also,
indicators, right? Now it's strands and standards. So that's got to be.
because the teacher wouldn't
And
realize
then the other thing is just the language progression. See, that's where I think.
Your meeting has ended.